Welcome. Hello again. It is February 19th, 2024. Welcome to Scouching Live. Of course, I am Will. Today we are not joined by my best friend in the whole world, Sam McGilligan. Unfortunately, he is out for Family Day commitments, I guess would be the word you could use. But anyway, so you just get me, and we also get producer AJ. Producer AJ, how you been after a brief hiatus, a brief disappearance? But how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Will. I'm very disappointed that Sam is your best friend and I'm not. This is news to me.
Well, no, you're not my. You say job every time.
Yeah, but
You're.
it's a joke. Come on, Will. What about my feelings here?
I didn't know you had those, honestly, but that's okay. I'm just kidding. I know you have feelings.
Yes, I do.
You have big feelings. I apologize. I'm stalling for time while I pull up the live stream monitor here. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Scouching Live. We have a great show planned for tonight. But before we get into it, we're going to get into the ad read. So we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link code below or scan the QR code in the stream to provide a kickback to the show and everything you buy in the shop. Or you could subscribe at Puck Preps Hockey, where you can get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs with Sam and I and a bunch of other pretty smart people doing some pretty smart stuff over there. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked player targeted analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA and NCAA Europe and beyond, with solutions for any organization's needs. And of course, Scouching.ca, where you can subscribe for exclusive access to innovative data tools with unparalleled insights into the draft, its prospects, and players making their way into the NHL, as well as a really fun Discord server where we get up to all kinds of hijinks and all kinds of no good. Tonight, we are going to be speaking on a few NHL-based topics before getting to your chat questions, which we will, of course, get to. So if you have any questions regarding anything in the sport of hockey or anything beyond that you desire us to discuss, fire away. But our topics of the evening we're going to start, of course, in everybody's favorite city in the whole wide world, Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
The best place ever.
It's a pretty decent place. I mean, I've been quite a few places, and Toronto always seems like a pretty good place. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about just how insane Auston Matthews has been over the last little while, over the course of this season, and have a little bit of a discussion about his greater impact on the game, because I think it's about time we start doing that if people aren't doing it already, which I think they kind of are, but whatever. We'll pretend we started it. We're also going to talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets a little bit more. Obviously, they fired Jarmo Kekalainen. There is change in the air. The winds of change is out there for Columbus, and we're going to dig into the Blue Jackets a little bit more, what his tenure was like, and where they go from here. We're going to also recap a little bit about the Stadium Series, because we watched quite a bit of those games, and they were tons and tons of fun. I think you would agree.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we're going to dig into the Stadium Series a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Jaromir Jagr. And I think we're going to have a little bit of a greater discussion about maybe some Hockey Hall of Fame related topics and jersey retirements and all kinds of fun little stuff, because he's an interesting case study that I think is a nice example of things. But for starters, we're going to go to the place that everyone loves when we talk about them, the Toronto Maple Leafs, more specifically Auston Matthews. AJ, why don't you start us off, because these are your boys. This is your boy. Where do you what in the hell is going on with that kid from Arizona?
You know what's going on, Will? His name on the plaque that says greatest goal scorer of all time.
We're getting right into it, eh?
Oh yeah. I've been saying it for the past 2 years, Will. I've been saying it for 2 years. And finally, yes, people are starting to actually take it seriously.
Yes.
He is disgusting.
I am sitting in a room with 2 framed photos of former Toronto Maple Leafs, and I am sitting in a room as well with another framed photo of another Toronto Maple Leaf fan a Toronto Maple Leaf who is still mad at me after how I treated him the first episode he came on as a co-host. But honestly, trying to set aside these guys watching me in case I say something incorrect, even though I was entirely and horribly incorrect about Auston Matthews the last time we brought him up, I can't disagree. Like, we're talking goal scoring, right? Like, just the truest sense of the word, right? Who is the greatest all time at scoring the goals, putting the puck in the net, right? I get the feeling. I think there's also data to back it up that I pulled before the show. I don't think I disagree with you. He's been unbelievable, setting aside however many, 10 hat tricks this year that he's had?
6.
Something like that?
Oh,
6. Right. Is it? They were talking about something about if he gets to double digits, he'd be the first player since the 80s, I think, since Gretzky to do it with 10 hat tricks in a season or something like that. Pretty nuts. But I mean, I guess I'll throw it back to you. But to me, it's like when you talk about the greatest goal scorer of all time, right? He's probably there. I don't know who else in terms of literally just being able to take the puck in a lot of different situations and put it in the net.
I mean, people will argue for Ovi, and it's a completely understandable argument.
Yes.
But I look at just the variety of ways Auston Matthews scores every single year. How he adds a new layer of goal scoring. How he's now able to just take pucks and one-touch them into the back of the net with deception, which is incredibly hard to do. Like Alexander Ovechkin had his spot. He'd load up on the power play, get a pass from Nick Backstrom, or even if it wasn't on the power play, like he'd go to his office and rip a shot, right? And he is a volume shooter. And so is Matthews. But like Ovi just brute forced his way into scoring as many goals as he did, which is still massively impressive. But Auston Matthews is just able to score in a variety of ways with, like, he's revolutionized a shot. Like, Connor Bedard's toe drag move is literally what Auston Matthews did. Like, that was his shot that now Bedard has taken and is using for himself. Because it's disgusting.
Yeah, like that's the thing too, is right? Like Ovi had his spot, right? You know, Brett Hull was, from what I remember of Brett Hull being a kid, I think he retired before you were born. But what I remember of Brett Hull was just his slap shot. Like you teed him up anywhere, kind of like Ovechkin, right? He just would blast it through the net. You know, and I think I think you mentioned this before the show, but like the era in which we're in, yes, it's a high scoring era, but to see a guy who is on pace to break 70 goals is still
76.
insane for the. Yeah, he's on pace to almost get to 80. And actually, well, here's a little thing I found out, but if you look into it a little bit more, since December 1st, he's on a 90 goal pace. And that is while shooting 25% or 24%, which granted is very high, but he's sustained that for almost 3 months, which is, or 2 months, I should say. Well, all of December, all of January, and potentially all of February. Like that is absolutely insane. And I had another point, but it totally slipped my mind. But being over a goal per game since December 1st is absolutely out of control. The thing about him is that I think I agree, like the goal scoring, like the ability to, you know, yes, he can do the one-timer thing, open ice shot, he can do that too. He goes to the net. Oh, now I remember. That's the thing. You said he was kind of a volume shooter, but also like in the analytics era, like you can say what you want about expected goals, and I certainly have had my somewhat tepid criticism of that kind of work, but it does still shine value on where a player is generating their offense from. And with Auston Matthews, like I don't know if this is still the case, but at least before this season, nobody was even close at generating high danger chances for themselves. Like no one in the analytics era where there's event tracking in the NHL, no one's even close, except Auston Matthews. Like at 5-on-5, I should say. And I feel like if you are one of the best potential goal scorers at 5-on-5 in the NHL by a margin, and you also have the capability of just scoring a ton of goals, right? You may not bash in the rebounds, but for every rebound you don't bash in, he's going to score 2 from the faceoff circle, right? I think those two things go hand in hand. The last thing I'll also say about this, in terms of like from the data perspective of things, I did go and look. And so what I did was, if you took the NHL's average number of goals scored per team and divided them by the average number of games played by a team, and took Auston Matthews' goal rate and did a percentage of the NHL's average goal rate, He's scoring 29.5% of the rate that that NHL teams are scoring on average. And when you scale back in history, because you can say, oh, but Gretzky scored more, or Brett Hull scored more, or Teemu Selanne had 76, or Mario Lemieux had an 85 goal season, and Ovechkin scored 65 in the 2000s when nobody was scoring 50. All of that is true. But it's also true that Auston Matthews might score 80 in an era where I don't think anybody else is scoring 60, right? Like, you might know better than me.
This season?
Was there a 60 goal scorer last year outside of, I know it wasn't Auston Matthews, but
Connor McDavid and David Pastrnak.
Okay, so both those guys got to 60.
Yeah.
So
it's a higher era of goal scoring, but still 80 or even 76 is still a lot higher.
Yeah, we haven't seen that since like when I was little, right? Like when I was in diapers, I don't think. And I think it was Selanne, the last guy to break 70, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, the other thing too I looked at was other high-end scorers, right? You could say, oh, but you said before the show, Gretzky scored in an era where everybody was scoring a bunch of goals, which, okay.
Goalies stood up.
Yes. But if you look at Gretzky's 92 goal season, where he had 92 goals in 80 games, which is bonkers, the NHL, on average, a team scored 321 goals. Just for the record, last year, that number was 258. So imagine the average NHL team scoring over 60 goals more in a season in fewer games, which is that was the average in the league at the time. Wayne Gretzky's goals per game relative to league average was 28.6%. So if Matthews just sustains this goal scoring rate, he is arguably, I would say, having the second best goal scorers season of all time behind Brett Hull when he scored 86. But even then, like, if he keeps this pace up, crosses even 80, you never know at this rate. I said he wouldn't get to 60, but he's going to get to 60 like next week, which was a dumb call on my end. I doubted Auston Matthews, which bad call. He probably heard me.
Dumb.
He heard me and went, yeah, screw that guy, and just went out and proved me wrong pretty much immediately. I actually think he did pretty much immediately start scoring a absolute boatload of goals after I said that.
Because I remember calling you an idiot in our Discord chat.
Yes, almost immediately, which I will admit, I'm not always a genius. I'm often not a genius. And that was one of my low points in my entire life, to be perfectly honest. But Brett Hull is the only player I could find by doing this work very quickly that crossed 30% of the league's average in terms of goal scoring. But Matthews could cross that. Matthews could get there. And the fact that he's consistently been well above 25% every year, except for last year, the last 4 out of every 5 years, is bonkers. Like, and I mean, if the Leafs don't, make their way through in a bit of a playoff run this year, it would be very Toronto Maple Leafs to me. But I mean, it would be a heck of a waste of a hell of a season from this guy unless something goes catastrophically wrong.
So, Will, let me pose a question to you.
Fire away.
Where does Matthews now rank in your heart ballot? Because I know there's a lot of people that are saying that, like, and I think he should be in that conversation more so than he was when we brought it up for midseason.
Yes.
But do you think that he should win the Hart Trophy if he scores 70 goals?
Did I have Kucherov, I think, on my ballot? Was it Kucherov?
I know you had McKinnon. You had McKinnon as your
right. McKinnon, McDavid, but I think number 3 was
number 2
Kucherov.
Is Kucherov for you at the time.
Okay, so I mean,
and you had Hellebuck at 3. I know because I edited the shorts.
Right. I mean, Hellebuck is still probably, like, he is really doing a heck of a job for the Winnipeg Jets. Like, if we're talking most valuable player to their team, sure. I mean, the way I see it with Matthews is, I mean, I could at least see him get the best player in the league as voted by the Players Award. I think it's the Ted Lindsay.
Yes, that is correct.
Because if he scores 70 goals, right, you would probably give that award to a player who had 70 assists, right? Like, 70 assists is an amazing accomplishment, even in this day and age. Like Connor McDavid's already at 60, but that's Connor McDavid.
Jonathan Huberdeau did it the year he got traded, or like the year before he got traded to Calgary.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure he I think he was like at 71 assists or something like that.
Connor McDavid had 72 assists in 2020 in 56 games, which is outrageous. And then 79 and then 89 last year. So 89 assists last year for Connor McDavid. That's unbelievable. But you also get twice as many opportunities on the score sheet to get assists as you do goals. And scoring goals in the NHL, if you didn't know, is really hard. It's easier now than it was in prior years, but it's really hard. So, I mean, to me, yeah, I think it absolutely puts Matthews in the Hart conversation. And again, like, even if you use the definition of the Hart Trophy, like, what are the Toronto Maple Leafs without Auston Matthews, right, this year? If the Leafs didn't win that draft lottery and they had Patrick Laine or Pierre-Luc Dubois or whatever, it probably would have been Patrick Laine. Like, if they end up with that player and his career kind of goes a similar way, where are the Leafs right now, right? Without an Auston Matthews, I don't think it's going
struggling
quite as well.
Struggling a lot without Morgan Rielly. Also, quick correction from a observant chat viewer.
Yes,
Huberdeau had 85 assists the year before he got traded to Calgary. So it's like,
which is still crazy.
Yeah.
Still,
and I
don't
think he has 85 points with Calgary.
No, I don't think so either.
Just kind of nuts.
But yeah, I mean, I do think I would agree. I think it is a big part of that conversation. I think he's at least in the discussion. I think it's hard to take Connor McDavid out of that and McKinnon as well. But I mean, I think he certainly played his way into that discussion, especially like Connor McDavid's on pace for 35 goals this year, 97 assists for that matter, which is also pretty incredible.
Unreal.
But again, you get twice as many opportunities to get assists, and scoring goals is hard, right? Passing the puck to your line mate can work into your benefit, right? Like that's one thing, but you're not the one putting it in the net. But Matthews putting it in the net 70 times this year on a team that kind of needs him like a lot this year to sort of fill in a lot of their holes. Yeah, I think so. What about yourself? I mean, I think I know your answer before you even say it, but
what do you think my answer is?
Number one, he's the guy.
Right
who
now,
else is going to challenge him?
Right now, no. I still think McKinnon's season's been pretty insane. But if he continues on this pace, I think it's going to be hard to not give him the Hart Trophy again, because he got it when he had his 60-goal season, and he did that in 73 games. So he could have had even more than that. Like, he was on pace for like 66 goals that year.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of hard to argue against it. But I don't know. It can get really tough, because I think there are like a couple of players that you can give it to every single year a lot of the times, other than when Connor McDavid just takes over and is the most dominant force.
150 points or something.
Yeah, right? Like,
yeah.
The year that Matthews won the Hart Trophy, I actually thought that Shesterkin could have won it. Like, that would have been my pick, because he really willed the Rangers into the playoffs. The Leafs were an awesome team without Matthews and 60 goals. Like, they still would have made the playoffs, in my opinion, even without Matthews. Like, that's how good that team was, even though they choked like they tend to do. But I felt like that year you could have easily given it to Shesterkin. Like, there's always a couple of guys that really deserve consideration. So we'll see at the end of the season. I still think McKinnon for now, but Matthews has made it close. McDavid's made it closer, and Kucherov is still Kucherov. He's awesome. So we'll see between those four, at least in my mind, who will take at least my first ballot vote.
Yeah. I'll still keep Connor Hellebuyck in there, just because Winnipeg is a team with two guys that are a point a game, and that's it. And he's sort of carrying them to. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for them, and if he sort of keeps this up. But I think he's part of that discussion as well. Maybe not the Ted Lindsay. I think that's not going to him. But in terms of what would the Winnipeg Jets be if Laurent Brossoit was their goalie every game? Probably not quite. Even though he's had a great year too, probably not quite at this point. But I mean, I guess with the question of the segment, is Auston Matthews the greatest goal scorer of all time? There is probably a data case to be made that is true. And I mean, in this day and age, like, you just, again, like you said, the way he scores, the variety with which he's able to put the puck in the net. He didn't win the hardest shot competition at the skills competition, but like, who cares? He doesn't need to, right? Like it's just unbelievable. He can tip it, he can shoot it, he can go to the net and slap it in, he can, do all kinds of stuff. He had a really nice primary assist today though, so he can also dish it once in a while, but why pass it when you can shoot like he can? But I think we come on the same side here, right? Like the guy's probably the greatest goal scorer of all time especially if he stays healthy.
Yep, I think he is. I think by the time his career ends, and this will be the last point I think we should say on this before we move on, he'll definitely be there.
Yeah. I mean, how many goals does he have in his career already? Like 380? And he's 20.
I think you said it was 348.
Okay, so let's say 350.
No, it's 348 because he scored his 300th to start the season.
Yeah.
So you just
348,
add that on.
You are correct. But yeah, like at this rate, if he plays 1,000 games, he's gonna have like 600 goals, maybe 650 goals after 1,000 games. Like, and he'll probably go well past 1,000 as long as he stays healthy. That's just it's just insane to me. But yeah, I think we're in the same boat on this relatively. And I mean, yeah, I think there's evidence to back it up as well. We're going to talk a bit about the Columbus Blue Jackets. And so, yeah, if you didn't know, they got rid of their general manager, Jarmo Kekalainen, who was there. He got hired in 2014, I want to say. I should Google that just to be sure. But yeah, 2013, he was hired. 2013, almost to the day. So Jarmo Kekalainen, yeah, he's gone. Times are changing. Things are changing in Columbus, and probably for good reason. It has not. You and I both had interesting thoughts about this team going into the year, and it has not really gone how at least I thought it would go for them. I didn't think they would be this miserable, but it seems like things are pretty miserable for Columbus.
Neither did I. I thought they'd be a lot better than they've shown. Like I thought Johnny Gaudreau would come back a bit more, and he just hasn't. I think even me to an extent, like I was never the biggest fan of Patrick Laine, but I bought it a lot more than I think I should have even. It's just like this team as a whole, like they spent a lot on trying to change around their defense significantly this year, and it really didn't pay off.
No, it did not. I mean, I looked at some of the players individually, and the guys they brought in, like Provorov and Severson, haven't really been the guys that are like massive problems for them. But I agree, right? Like when you pay over $9 million for Johnny Gaudreau, he does from the Columbus games I've seen, he doesn't even look that exciting anymore. Like there was a time where he was one of the most exciting, electrifying players in the league, and that just has kind of disappeared. And when that disappears for a guy that small, it becomes a lot more difficult to score. He's only got 7 goals this year, 30 assists, but you're paying for more than 37 points at this point in the year. Like their third and fourth highest scoring players are Kirill Marchenko and Dmitry Voronkov. Like that doesn't sound sustainable to me. I like those players more just as much as the next guy, but they haven't really taken that step, like they seem to be really sort of spinning their wheels in the mud right now. But with Jarmo Kekalainen, like it was interesting looking back on his career for me. He was there for 5 of their 6 playoff appearances and their only series win, which, and he was also there for the trademark embarrassment of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which was a hoot. But yeah, like to be there that long and for 5 of the team's playoff appearances of the 6 is pretty, that's notable, even though they only won 1 series. Like that's still not bad.
I'll give them the play-in series. I count the play-in series in the COVID
year,
just
fair
because,
enough.
They had to abbreviate the season. So to me, that's making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they got that win over the Leafs, and then they had the sweep of the Lightning.
Well, and you also can't not give them credit, in my opinion. You can't not give them credit for doing what they did against Toronto, right? Like, I think their highest scoring player that year was Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I think he had 49 points or something like that, or 50 points. Toronto was Toronto, right? They were supposedly a juggernaut, and then they did not. It felt like they didn't score a single goal the entire time. Oh well, they did come back that one game.
Yeah, when I turned the television off and then realized what the hell is going on.
Yeah,
and they won it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe my eyes. I remember watching that game. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But if there's anything that encapsulates the Toronto Maple Leafs, that game and that series, I think, does it pretty well if you're not familiar with Toronto. But I also found
too familiar with Toronto.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, everybody knows. Everybody's too familiar. Yeah, but the moves that he made, like Kekalainen, actually had I think, a pretty decent run of moves. But the problem is when he didn't make good moves, they were real messes, right? Like almost every major signing recently has been, I mean, at best okay, but mostly not. Like Elvis Merzlikins has not really worked out the way they wanted. Jack Roslovic is fine and he's not super expensive, but again, like not, you don't watch the Columbus Blue Jackets and go, holy crap, look at Jack Roslovic go. Adam Boqvist, $2.6 million. He has not really done a whole lot. I know because I have him in fantasy in one league. Eric Goodbranson, I think, you and I both agree, bad.
Torpedoing the team. Torpedoing the team.
His defensive metrics are okay, but I feel like that's only because he just wills it that way. But he's an offensive black hole that does not benefit Columbus. Like, it is bad. And he's there at a pretty decent cap hit for a few years. Gaudreau, Patrick Laine, Andrew Peeke on paper this year, and when I've seen Columbus, has been not great. And you're paying him a lot of money. He's not really been in the lineup a whole lot. He, I think, was hurt as well for quite a while. But that totals up to $34.6 million against their cap. Granted, some of it's coming off pretty soon, but still, that's a lot of money to spend for a team that is right at the bottom of the standings. That's not ideal. But luckily, outside of, I would say, maybe Gaudreau, a lot of these contracts aren't like complete nightmares, but these things add up, right? Like you and I both know from watching Toronto do stuff, like sometimes contracts and free agent signings can be like a death by 1,000 cuts, like it can just add up when you make little tiny errors or spend too much here, spend too much there, get a bad fit here, and here you are. But his trade record, in my opinion, you feel free to disagree, was pretty good.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's outstanding.
I think what you also could say is that their success was largely at the early part of his GM-dom. His success was driven a lot by getting Artemi Panarin and when Sergei Bobrovsky was hot, right? Because once both of those players were gone, they never made the playoffs except for when they embarrassed the Leafs and then got eliminated by Tampa in 5 games. But that Panarin trade was wizardry in retrospect. They got Panarin and Tyler Mott, who's fine. He's still a serviceable guy, for Brandon Saad, Anton Forsberg, and they also moved up in the draft, right? They moved a year back, but up a round, which craziness. And they had Matt Duchene, basically for a first-round pick that Ottawa spent on Lassie Thompson, which, yeah. And 2 prospects that, whatever, they're Vitaly Abramov and Jonathan Davidson, I think, was the other one, who are, what are they doing now? He got Laine and Roslovic for Dubois in a third. Say what you will about Patrick Laine, but, I think you said this today, that they kind of, the winner of those trades was Winnipeg when they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is fair. That's true. But the Columbus deal, Patrick Laine has moments where, yeah, he does what you want him to do.
But I think it goes back to a point of, like, even with Zach Werenski, a lot of their guys are injury prone too. Like, Werenski misses significant time every single year.
Yep, that's also true.
Laine has missed significant time now every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it just feels that everything goes wrong.
Yes, which is unfortunate. That can derail anybody, right? And yeah, that's very true. But I don't know. Like, you still got to win, right? Like, that's the job.
And I know both look really optimistically on the guys they're bringing up, like in the future. I'm a huge Adam Fantilli fan. I know you are too, and I'm a massive Gavin Brindley guy. I also like William Whitelaw quite a bit. Like, I like what they're doing prospect-wise for the most part.
Yep.
It's just, I'm just hopeful that they can be competitive because I want that market to work. Like,
Yeah, like
I root for every market to work in hockey because the worst thing is losing a team. Because there are people that really, really appreciate that team being there and really love it. And to lose that is just gut-wrenching.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and the thing too about Jarmo Kekalainen is, we were talking about this earlier, but he, I have to give him credit. Like the hirings that he made here and there in a lot of spots were unconventional, right? Their assistant general manager, I think his name is Josh Flynn, was not a traditional hockey hire. I know Zach Urbach was one of the first prospect stats guys, and he was hired by Kekalainen quite a while ago, and he's gone on to run a lot of that drafting that they've done, that has put them in a pretty decent position. But the thing is, like, judging by who the Columbus Blue Jackets put in a position to guide that team, they seem to want, like, they have all this skill, they have all this upside, they have all this potential and offense, but they surround it with the polar opposite, right? Guys like Goodbranson, right? And that's the first one that came to mind. But Andrew Peeke is another example. Like there's this like toughness aspect. This we have to. It's kind of like they need direction, and I think that teams kind of trip over themselves when they think they have direction by trying to do everything at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is to me not a direction. And so to me, I'm hopeful that Columbus ownership and in general Columbus looks at this situation and recognizes the positive things that have happened, like the positive steps to play more of a modern game, rather than do, I mean, I can't really, I don't know if this is what's happening with this team, but like it feels like the Anaheim Ducks are a team that is, they have a lot of skill, they've got a lot of potential on their team, but they also seem to really want a tough team, like tough, drop the gloves, hit you before you touch the puck kind of team, which to me is not super conducive to being a good NHL team, at least in the regular season. I mean, I hope that Columbus recognizes that there are good things here that have come from more modern thinking and more progressive thinking, that should be nurtured and continued, because I feel like you kind of trip over yourself when you try to grasp on to what worked 5-10 years ago, right? But yeah, you can't fault Jarmo Kekalainen in a lot of ways. Some of the signings may not be great. It just, like you said, there's a lot of lack of luck, but the trades that he made, you can't complain about. He put Columbus in a significantly better position with a lot of these trades. The Seth Jones trade is another one. Yeah, you could say what you want about Adam Boqvist, but they ended up with David Jiricek, Cole Sillinger, and trading up 20 spots in that trade in the draft. Like getting a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Nick Foligno, getting a first-round pick and a third-round pick they used on Jordan Dumais for David Savard. Like the only trade I came across where I thought wasn't great was the Oliver Bjorkstrand one, which was money-based. Like they just didn't have the money. And so they had to trade him and got 2 picks. One of those picks was traded for Damon Severson, and they used the other pick on Luca Pinelli, who is having a great year in Ottawa on a team that has not been as good as last year. But generally, like, the guy made good moves, right? And unfortunately just didn't break his way very often, especially once Panarin left.
Yeah, it felt like the coaches that he brought in a lot of the times just didn't work.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Like, it was kind of disastrous what happened this offseason with Babcock.
Yeah. Yep.
And even
Tortorella
Pascal
was there with him.
Yeah, but Tortorella got them series wins, to be fair to John Tortorella. And as much as I've questioned his thinking in the past, he's doing a decent job with Philly. And I'm willing to put aside some of my thoughts about, like, some of my earlier thoughts about John Tortorella as a man, like as a coach. But I think, like, the way Pascal Vincent talked about Jiricek, and I'm bringing this up for a third time on our show, but that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's insane to me.
Yeah,
and I think that Jarmo, as somebody who made trades, did an outstanding job. Like, I look at what he did for Columbus, and overall, he was a good general manager for them. It was probably time for them to move on from him because things were starting to spiral in the wrong direction. But like overall, he did a pretty good job. I think more than anything, that team needs to, and I think you were getting to this point earlier. They need to embrace the skill and speed that they're going to have with Adam Fantilli, Gavin Brindley, and pair that with like Kent Johnson. You have Johnny Gaudreau now, so you got to make use of that. And you and I both like a lot of their guys. I think they just got to pick an identity. Just go down the skill, the more speed and skill route. And like you don't have to abandon being a tough team to play against. Like you don't have to. Like I understand there's a lot of teams that go out there and want to be physical, but if you're gonna do it, go and be the Florida Panthers. Like go and try and emulate what they're doing.
Or Vegas, you know,
right? Like that's the kind of tough to play against team that comes at you with speed and skill. The Florida Panthers in particular.
Yeah. And I agree. Like there is a modern version of tough to play against, right? But you have to be at least very physically intense. Like you can't, like Matt Rempe to me is not the future of the NHL, right? It's guys like, the name always comes to mind for me is like Alex Tuck, like big but skilled, can move. Those are the guys that really benefit. The way a guy like Sam Bennett plays, right? Like he has that way of generating offense, but also has intensity and physicality in his game that he's really sort of grown to appreciate. And
like
also just for the record,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Matt Tkachuk, another great example, right?
And he's an extreme example because he's one of the better players on earth. But like guys more in that mold who are tough.
Brady Tkachuk too. Like
Brady to a
certain extent. Yeah, to an extent. But I mean, and I'll also say this about Columbus, but like they have drafted really well. We've been kind of touching on it here and there, but if you take my MODEL, which definitely shouldn't be taken to heart 100%, but they are looking like the strongest prospect pool in the league right now. On paper, the highest rated players are Fantilli, Dumais, Matejchuk, Brindley, Pinelli. Andrew Strathman is having a very good year in the USHL. David Jiricek is still there. We'll see what happens with Stanislav Svozil as an AHL rookie. They've got Sergei Ivanov, who is having a fantastic year in the KHL in net. They've got a lot of really good pieces in the pipeline here. So I hope for, it's like with Ottawa, right? Like I hope for better things because like you said, you don't want a team to fail. And Columbus deserves good hockey. It's a great city, great arena, great fans. They have a cannon for crying out loud. So
yeah, that's awesome.
I don't know.
I love the cannon.
Absolutely. So I'm hopeful. And I mean, I don't think I've seen much of this, but I guess part of this is also, I just don't want to see people kicking Kekalainen on the way out. Like I've heard people in the past kind of judge him a little bit based on, some more traditional kinds of hockey thinking, let's say. But, through all of that, in a sense, he kind of did have a point with some of the things that were being talked about. And when he made deals and when he was moving players, he did a better job than I remember, honestly, when like the team probably deserved a lot better than what they got under him. And yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but they've got the pieces to be competitive. And I hope they get there because boy, they deserve it. They've been around a long time and they've been to the playoffs, 5 times? I think we said 6 times.
6, yeah.
Yeah. So not ideal. But anyway, on to bigger and better things for that team, hopefully. AJ, you watched a little bit more of the Stadium Series than I did, so why don't you run with this one while I refill my water glass?
Okay. The Stadium Series was awesome. I watched a bit of the... Yeah, good talk. I didn't watch a ton of the Flyers-Devils game because I was flipping through other games that were on that night. And also the Leafs were playing, so that's where my mind goes a lot of the time. But, like, that was a fun game from what I saw. Nico Hischier had 3 points, and he played really well.
Yes, he did.
And I'm rooting for the Devils to make the playoffs. I like the New Jersey Devils a lot because of a certain individual named Jack Hughes, who absolutely rocks the world.
You mean Hack? Jack Hughes the Hack?
No, come on, Will. He's
awesome. I love Jack Hughes. He's the best.
He really is.
They pay to watch me play. What was it that he said? These people pay to watch me play. And then they lost.
Yeah, man. No, but I love Jack Hughes, and so I want to see the Devils do well. But the game on Sunday was really the game.
Oh, so good. Yeah,
that was awesome.
So good. Yeah.
Sorry to all the Islanders fans out there. That game rocked so hard. I dislike both teams a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. My own personal bias. Like I'm not a huge Rangers guy at all. As I've said on the show, that I kind of think they're fraudulent. But like, that was such a crazy game, and the way it ended too. They pull the goalie twice. They get a bunch of power play opportunities, and they just come back, man. Like,
yeah,
the Rangers game. That game was just mind-blowing. Like, that's why I'm having trouble talking about this.
Yeah.
Because I was so convinced that that game was over. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
this was a stomping. And then Artemi Panarin showed up.
Dude, that guy rules.
He does.
Artemi Panarin, like we were just talking about him with Columbus and how that team was completely different after he left on paper. The Rangers without Artemi Panarin right now, like they're probably okay, but gee whiz, he puts them in a different universe. It's pretty crazy. Because he played excellent. That overtime goal was so sick. That was so good. The other thing, the one thing I wanted to note about that game too is like, especially as a prospect guy and a guy who watches a lot of draft guys, like it is such a benefit in the NHL if you learn and stick to the idea of why traffic in front and tips matter. Like I don't see, maybe I'm being anecdotal, but I've watched well over 1,000 games in the last few years combined. I don't really remember putting in my database a whole lot of times that young players just tip the puck in front of the net. It's a lot of perimeter play or one-timers in between the face-off dots, or rebounds or something like that. But I think you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every Rangers goal during the game was scored off of a tip. I think, or at least most of them, except for the overtime goal. And so it's just something that I noticed during that game and sort of took home a little bit with me, where it's like, that seems like a very common thing in the NHL. Like the Leafs have done it a bunch in the last few games they've played, where it's just harmless little shots from the perimeter that just get tipped or redirected a little bit.
Yeah.
And that stuff can really make a huge difference.
And they've got a really great guy at that too. Like Chris Kreider.
Yeah.
He's one of the best tippers in the league.
Yeah. Insane. Right out there with like a Pavelski. Like Pavelski's the guy that gets all the attention, but Kreider.
I think Kreider's done more recently.
Yeah. And Chris Kreider, like, he scored how many goals? I'm going to look it up, but like a ton of goals last year. And yeah, a lot of them were generated.
I don't know if it was last year. I think it was
2 years ago. Yeah. You had 52 and 21-22.
He had more goals than Auston Matthews over that whole year if you include playoffs.
Yep. Like 36 last year. He's on pace for like 40 maybe this year-ish, just by doing the math in my head a little bit, but a lot of it comes from what we're talking about.
Yeah, because he's a bit of a weird player, and he was a player that I didn't really like originally. Like I remember, I'm going to expose myself here as a bit of a dummy, but I remember saying before that 2022, like it was the 22-23 season. Or no, it was the 21-22 season where he had the 50 goal, like the 50 plus. I remember saying, Chris Kreider's not a top line winger. Like I said that right before the season. I was talking to my buddies about it. Like, no, he's not a top line winger at all. Like I think the Rangers are terrible. Like that's what I said. And boy, did he prove me wrong.
Well, it happens once in a while. You can be wrong, just like me. Once in a while.
He hadn't scored 30 goals in his career before that season, right?
Ever.
Like he's been a late bloomer in that regard. Like he's gotten a lot better with age.
Yeah,
and that's not the norm.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, watching that game, it's so nice to like, because I don't watch like one team all the time, really. I watch a lot of Toronto because I live here, but like I don't. I watch. I like Adam Fox is the guy I'm about to bring up. Like I've always loved Adam Fox, but it's so refreshing once in a while to just watch a Rangers game and go, that's why I love that guy. Like that the primary assist he had on the goal that tied it up, where he passed it over to Zibanejad, who made no mistake and buried it. Like just a beautiful sort of one touch, top of the umbrella pass down low, really beautiful play by the Rangers. And Adam Fox is just the guy that every time I watch the Rangers, I'm like, yep, this guy was a 3rd round draft pick. All right, cool. Follow your dreams, draft kids, just because you don't go in the 1st round.
Because graduate too.
Right, smart boy, probably. Pretty smart guy.
Like that's his play style. He's kind of a quiet player in a lot of ways. Like you don't see him do a ton of flashy stuff. He's just super smart and really good at pulling guys out of position and just threading the puck through like into that open space. Like that's who Adam Fox is. He is awesome that way and a ton of fun to watch and a really good defender too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously reasons why he's won a Norris Trophy in his career. He is probably the most productive defenseman, one of the most productive defensemen over the NHL since the pandemic. I would say, like since the pandemic happened in 2020, like he has had pretty much a point a game ish ever since. Which I mean, even in this day and age, that's pretty incredible for a defenseman. But yeah, that game ruled. I also wanted to mention, shout out to Jesper Bratt for that New Jersey game. He was a monster from what I saw in that game.
Yes,
I just went through it relatively quickly. He was a beast in that one. If you want to see a thing that, why you may see young defensemen take a little bit of time, but he out-muscled the heck out of Jamie Drysdale a couple of times. Just, Brad is fast, but he just gets his bum in the way and you can't touch the puck and, juggles that speed and puck protection in conjunction so well. Although I will say the Devils' numbers on their jerseys were really hard to read. I didn't like that much. It was really strange, but that's okay. In general, the vibes were great. And the games were also really, really good.
Yeah.
But
this is also why you got to watch hockey, right? Because Jesper Bratt, I think 5th round or 6th round draft pick.
I think it was a 6th round pick,
which is pretty insane.
And I remember that draft year, and I wasn't super into doing all this, and I definitely didn't see a whole lot of the 2nd division in Sweden. But I remember watching like whatever I could find on him and going, okay, this guy's pretty good. Like sure, 2nd round ish, sure. And then he goes in the 6th round, and I kind of just went, okay, like. He plays men's hockey already and is relatively productive. Like that's at least a decent bet. And yeah, like it is a really important thing as to why you #watch the games, right? Like, you may as well take a swing on the kid in Sweden who is scoring a bunch and doing it against grown men as well. And
is fast
is fast. He's been a heck of a player for the Devils. And I just thought he was outstanding in that outdoor game. I mean, other than that, I mean, I also I like you. I really enjoyed that Rangers Islanders game. But the Devils game was also kind of fun. It was more of a who can score the most goals kind of thing, but without as much drama. But the Rangers Islanders was a ton of fun.
One last thing to add: what'd you think of all the outfits and the lack of outfits from the New York Islanders?
Well, the lack of outfits from the Islanders doesn't surprise me at all. But they did the not fun but honorable thing, like by bringing in the firemen and bringing in the cops and all that stuff, like the first responders in New York, all that. That's cool, It's not that much fun, but it's cool, And if I were a fireman, I would relish that quite a lot. And, in a way, that's a nice thing to do for the community. But the Devils' whole vibe ruled. That whole thing was awesome. It was all great. I thought it was all really, really great the whole weekend. I will say, like, I kind of have trouble with outdoor games personally. I liked the Lake Tahoe one a lot because I thought that was really creative and unique, but this is just me. But I watch outdoor games and I feel like I just kind of lose interest. It just doesn't feel like the same environment.
Yeah, well,
but
it's not, right? Like
it isn't.
The games are created to service the people who actually go to those games more so than for like a broadcast experience.
Yeah.
But they're gonna get. I'm gonna turn on an outdoor game every time there's an outdoor game on. It's outdoor game. I'm turning it on.
Well, what else are you going to watch on New Year's Day, right? Like the Winter Classic is New Year's Day, and sure, you nurse your hangover with an outdoor game, whatever. Not that I condone binge drinking, but yeah, I also loved the fake park that they had. Like everybody on that field apparently was an actor, and they were just walking around like riding bikes, playing with their dogs. and it was like a fake park that was continuing for pretty much the whole game, which was crazy to me. Like that like create points to the NHL, right? Like that's creative, and it was a lot of fun for sure. But yeah, I had a lot of fun watching those games this weekend when I caught them. Speaking of having a lot of fun this weekend, I think Jaromir Jagr had a lot of fun doing what he did. So if you don't know, the Pittsburgh Penguins finally retired his jersey into the rafters in Pittsburgh, so 68 is no more. I don't know if you caught this, but I saw on Instagram, I think, he was chatting in warm-up when he was skating. He took warm-ups with Pittsburgh.
Which is awesome.
It's so awesome. But he was skating around with Chris Letang a little bit, and Letang said that when he showed up in Pittsburgh, he asked to wear 68. And Jagr was like, "Wait, really? You did?" He's like, "Yeah, I thought I wore it in junior, and like I wanted to wear the same number, and I thought it would be like honoring you in a certain way." And he's like, "But everyone in the organization was just like, are you nuts? Like, no, whatever." And that's why Chris Letang wears 58, because it's like 10 less, but still kind of same. Like 5 kind of looks like 6. So that's why Chris Letang wears 58, because Pittsburgh,
crazy.
Yeah, because Pittsburgh was unhappy with him. Well, not unhappy, but they thought that would be looked down upon if he took Jaromir Jagr's number in Pittsburgh, which, kind of understandable, but Chris Letang has had a hell of a career himself.
Yeah, like the number 58 in hockey, to me, the first person that comes to mind is, well, not Michael Bunting, but it's Chris Letang.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the person that comes to mind. So to hear that he wanted to be a different number is a little weird.
Yeah. Do you know, here's a trivia question for you. Do you know what the last number was to be worn for the first time in the NHL? And bonus points if you know the player.
The last number?
The last number to be worn once for the first time, I should say.
I'm just going to bet that it was 69 because it seems like a number that people wouldn't wear for obvious reasons.
Unfortunately, it was not 69. 69 has been worn a few times. Yeah. Andrew Desjardins, I think, was the most notable one. That's the player I think of when I think of wearing the number 69. It was actually 84. Guillaume, he and I share a namesake. Guillaume Latendresse of the Montreal Canadiens, when he broke into the NHL with them, wore 84. And it was the first time someone wore that number, and it was the last number that nobody had ever worn before. Which kind of surprises me, because like aesthetically, I find 84 kind of nice looking. It's a neat looking number, And,
yeah, didn't Grabovski wear 84?
Yes.
See, that's why I would have never picked that number.
Right. You would wait because you don't like Grabovski, or because
no.
Because, for the trivia question.
Yeah, for the trivia question, because like I'd seen an 84. Like you don't see many 69s, right?
Yeah. Grabovski started with 59 in Montreal, and then in Toronto he did wear 84. But Latendresse wore 84 with Montreal on the same team as Mikhail Grabovski. Also a great follow on Instagram too, or on social media. Mikhail Grabovski's got really good social media skills. Just side note there. But you wanted to have a little discussion about retirements, honoring jerseys, as it revolves especially around Jaromir Jagr. So why don't you introduce to our faithful audience of the viewers and listeners what you kind of wanted to get at with that?
Okay, I will. I think that jersey numbers should be retired. I think it is a cool thing to honor the guys who were awesome on your team. Like, to me, 34 needs to be retired when Matthews is done as a Leaf. 88 might need to be retired when William Nylander's done as a Leaf.
And 29, and 39, and 62.
all the numbers he wore, no. But 88, I think 88 should be retired. Right? Like, I think it's a great thing to honor those guys. Because at some level, like if somebody put on the number 13 in Toronto, I'd be like, well, what the hell is this? That's not Matt Sundin.
Yes.
Right? Like, I understand why people think it's kind of stupid to remove numbers from availability, but there's still a ton of numbers. They're not the sexiest numbers by any means. Like, there's a reason the number 84 wasn't a number that was worn all that much.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? But, like, at the end of the day, I think you should appreciate the guys who have been there before and just retire jersey numbers. Who cares? Bring back 00 so my year of 2000 can have a number that reflects our year.
The NHL has to have 00.
I want 00 back.
Like, so silly. We need 00. Martin Baron, the last player to ever wear 00. I hope he would agree. If he was on the show, I would ask him.
Yeah, 00 should be back.
Yeah,
and so should 0.
Yeah, single 0. Yeah, why not? It's a number. What's wrong with 0?
Yeah,
you know.
So it's like retire numbers. I don't agree with like retiring, other than 99 being the only retired number across all teams, and like there's basically a shadow retirement on Mario Lemieux 66.
Sure.
So whatever, those two numbers, if you want, nobody can wear them. But then have individual ones where nobody can wear them on those teams. It's just weird. Like I said, if I saw somebody wear the number 13 on the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'd be mad. Because that was Matt Sundin's number, and he deserves for nobody else to wear that number on that team.
So who are you arguing with? Because I haven't seen much discussion about not retiring jersey numbers. But I'm curious because
it's like the debate between honoring numbers and retiring numbers, right?
I see.
Like I don't agree with just honoring. I think you just retire them outright. Like the Leafs basically have a number honoring system, but nobody's gonna wear 13. Yeah. Nobody.
Just go out and do it. Do you think? How about this? Let's say Connor McDavid continues to have a career as good as this. Is he the next person to have his number retired by the league?
See, I would have said yes if there weren't other guys wearing 97 that are also awesome, like Kirill Kaprizov, right?
That's a fair point.
You know,
Gretzky was the only one. Yep.
Yeah, like
no one dared touch him except for Wilf Paiement. Wilf Paiement wore 99, I think, when Wayne Gretzky was in the league.
But do you know
and
why?
He was a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Do you know why Wayne Gretzky wore the number 99?
Yeah, because he used to wear 9. And Gordie Howe said that 9 was his number, so he should pick something different. So he put another 9 there, right? I think
you're on the right track, but I think it was when he was in the Sioux. Somebody else wore the number 9, and so they told him, if you like the number 9 so much, why don't you wear 2 of them? And so he wore 2 9s.
Right. Hey, man. It's marketed him and supported him for the rest of his life. He will just bank on that. He's got a whiskey named after that number. All kinds of good stuff.
But you know,
I could be wrong. But that sounds right too. But for some reason I thought it was like he met Gordie Howe.
But yeah,
and Gordie Howe in the World Hockey Association, and Gordie Howe was like,
it did
pick
like
your
he
own
wore
number.
the number 9 originally because it was for Gordie Howe.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No matter what, Gordie Howe was the influence on him wearing 99.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. Oh, it doesn't have data. Shoot. But if he wore, I didn't know if he wore 99 with the Indianapolis Racers.
But yeah, like, I just think that jersey numbers should be retired instead of honored. Just retire them. I don't want to see other people wear it. Like when Matthews is gone, I don't want to see somebody wearing 34 on the Toronto Maple Leafs ever
of course.
Again.
I agree. I think that it is an extremely meaningful thing. You know, as if you're a player that has that much meaning to the team, like an Auston Matthews or a Matt Sundin or you know, who knows who else,
like
right? Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl,
right?
Sidney Crosby.
Like nobody wears 87 in this league other than Crosby that I can think of. And I think that's kind of dumb. Yeah. I think other players should be able to wear 87, just nobody else on Pittsburgh ever.
Right. Well, that's also true too, right? Like other teams wearing numbers, because otherwise you just run into, you know, nobody could wear many numbers. if you wanted to go that direction. But yeah, I think that retiring. I mean, I would love to have my jersey number retired. I wore 64 playing ball hockey. I'd love to have that number raised to the rafters at some point and hanging there forever, and no one ever could wear it again. But yeah, I mean, Jaromir Jagr, man, he deserves whatever the heck the Pittsburgh Penguins want to give him, because that guy, I don't know how much you remember of Jagr, but gee whiz, that guy could play hockey. Holy smokes.
I remember him quite well.
Yeah.
Saw him score his 750th goal. I was there for that.
Were you born when he were you alive when he played for the Pittsburgh Penguins at all?
I don't know.
he left the Penguins. Oh, you would have been. Yeah, he left the Penguins after 2001. Oh man, I
was barely alive.
And I remember when he left, man. That was like wall-to-wall news. He had just scored 121 points. He was on pace for 120 points, or scored 120 points for 3 straight seasons in the late 90s when NHL offense was kind of on the decline. And he just the press coverage of his free agent signing in Washington was absolutely out of control. I remember that, just being glued to my television every morning before school, like waiting to see I guess it wouldn't have been before school because it was in July, but just in the mornings watching Sports Center, seeing if anything had happened. But yeah, eventually it did, of course.
And the last thing,
yeah, go ahead.
With Jaromir Jagr, because he's been playing for so long after his NHL career, just put him in the Hall of Fame already, please. Just do it. We don't even need to put him just give him the exceptional status, but as an old dude instead. Right? Like the CHL has its exceptional status for great young players that break into those leagues. Give Jagr exceptional status because he's playing to keep his team alive.
Yes. I mean, I'll check the Czech League standings right now, but I get the feeling that this is it for him. Like, he's not a needle mover in the Czech League. Like, even if he does play, they're still in last place by a pretty big margin, and he's only got 4 points in the 15 games he's played this year. Like, I just think that maybe he sees the writing on the wall here, because, and I think at that point, I agree with you. I think after this season, if he thinks that this is it for him, I think he's had a long enough and illustrious enough and meaningful enough career that you just skip the line, buddy. He's been playing forever. Like, if you want a sort of modern day equivalent almost of like a Gordie Howe-esque career, this is what it is. Like, he's 52 and still playing hockey, which is bananas. That's
he's a
crazy.
Year younger than my dad.
Yeah.
That's like nuts.
He started playing hockey when I was born, like in the NHL. In the NHL, the year that I was born was his first year in the NHL. Like, and I'm 33, turning 34. That is like my entire life. He's been in the NHL or playing professional hockey in some capacity, which is just insane to me.
And we both saw him when we were scouting Yuri Tiacek.
My boy, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and he played on the same team as a Jaromir Jagr, right? Like, that
was awesome.
And which is absolutely crazy. Tiacek, I think at the time hadn't been Tiacek, by the way, the 9th leading scorer on the team that is in last place in the Czech League. 9th leading scorer in the league on the team that is in last place.
As a defenseman.
By the way, as a defenseman. 30 assists in 47 games as a defenseman. But he's still a -10, so he sucks. But yeah, honestly, super, super meaningful player. And I agree. I think that after this season, it seems like the writing's on the wall a little bit. This might be it for him, especially if his team gets relegated. You got to, maybe not, honestly, though. The Czech second division, maybe he thinks he could still hang. But if it is it for him, I think that I would agree. I think you just skip the line with him and
just put him in now. Ship him. We don't even need to vote on it.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, we actually don't even have to vote on it. Nobody's going to object to just putting him in the Hall of Fame. I know there is tradition and precedent, but this is not a government. We're not doing something radical that affects human lives, right? This is just Jaromir Jagr deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Nobody's gonna not vote for him. Like, everybody's gonna vote for him to get in there as soon as he's eligible. Just put him in. Nobody's gonna object. And then you never have to do this for anybody else ever, because nobody else is going to play that long, I don't think. I just don't see it happening because he's a unicorn himself. How many guys play that long and continue beyond the NHL?
Probably zero.
Jaromir Jagr, and that's it. So just put him in there. It doesn't matter.
Yep. That sounds about right. I mean, I don't know. I have the patience. I can wait. It's okay.
I do not. I have severe ADHD.
I don't think they're going to make him wait after he does retire. I don't think they're going to make him wait. I just think that would be so silly, because he's just been, like, if he were a Canadian, I feel like they wouldn't make him wait, right? If he was still playing in the, I don't know, East Coast Hockey League to keep the team that he owns a winning team, people would probably go, yeah, as soon as you retire, man, I think we can put you right in. So we'll see what happens. But yes, I agree. Skip the line, fella. Skip the line, old man. It's like the seniors discount, you know? He's been around long enough. You just throw him in, whatever. But that will do it for the pre-plan, unless you had anything else you wanted to add or throw in there before we move on, Mr. Producer Man.
One thing.
Yes.
Go Leafs, go.
Mm-hmm.
And now, time for the ad read.
Yes, now time for advertisements. So we are brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link below or scan the QR code in the video stream to provide a small kickback to the show on everything you buy. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey, where you can get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs. Sam and I are writing up our recaps for the USN TDP 5 Nations tournament that ended in a little bit of fireworks, with Gabriel Eliasson being Gabriel Eliasson at the end of the game there in a win over the US team, which was interesting and fun. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA, Europe, and beyond, with solutions for any organization's needs. And of course, Scouching.ca, where you can get exclusive access to innovative data tools with tons of insight into draft prospects and players making their way into the NHL. You also will have access to our Discord server, as well as plenty of other goodies, early access to our blog posts over there. I'm working on one now about some of the data that I've tracked thus far in the season and what that kind of sheds some light on, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, let's get on to the chat questions. Again, if you have any questions, fire them off in the chat box here. We'll get to them before the end of the show, of course, as long as they're good. But I'm just kidding. We'll try to get to all of them.
A reasonable time of us.
Yes, not 90 seconds before we're done. Anyway, I kid. We love all of you dearly. The first question from Thomas Gagne: why is Tanner Howe so low? What are his main weaknesses? So I've got Tanner Howe a little bit low on my list. Where is he? I just searched the word low. He is at the late second round for me. Late second, early third round. I just, again, like I say again as if I've talked about this before, but to me with Tanner Howe, it's a lot of very much it's the name of the game is projecting to the NHL. And Tanner Howe to me is a guy who, if he's not on your second line or something, his impact is a little bit more limited. He's tenacious, I give him a lot of credit. He plays hard. There's some good skill there as well. But to play that offensive style in the NHL, like similar to Bedard last year in Regina, he gets the puck a lot. Regina does not have a lot of options. So a lot of play runs through him. And so I feel like a lot of his production is just through the raw volume through which Regina gives him. I like Tanner Howe, though. Like, he's ranked in a range with some solid players. And the funny thing about this draft to me is, some might call it a little soft, but to me, there's just a ton of guys who all bring something. Like, they bring something that I could see working in the NHL. Guys like Linus Eriksson or Daniil Ustinkov or Cole Baudouin or Adam Kleber, or like a lot of guys where when you watch them, you can go, all right, I could see something out of this guy. I'm not sure if it'll be tremendously high end or whatever. With Tanner Howe, it's similar, But for me, I'm just a little bit cooler on the likelihood of sort of really hitting that role. But, he's a good player. The skill's there. The tenacity is there. He doesn't really back down. He plays hard, which I think teams will value. But for me, it's just a matter of if I'm drafting a skilled forward to generate offense and all of those things in the NHL, like his lack of size, and I would say lack of escape velocity, lack of really high end skill to really sort of problem solve through traffic and get through pressure. It's not where I'd like it to be right now. Obviously, could it one day? Sure, absolutely. But right now, it's just, again, like, he's a good player, but there are some other guys where I see, right away I could see this guy in the NHL doing X, something more limited, but I could definitely see it. And it just kind of bumps him down one that, and he's now sort of in a group of players where I could see them playing a role, but some things have to come a ways, right? Like guys like Will Skahan, Matvei Shuravin, Luke Osborne, Nathan Villeneuve, guys where you can see something there, but it's just not quite put together enough to really be super, super confident about the player at a very, very high draft pick. So he's not in my first round for that reason, but could I see him, the tier that Howe is in stretches to 40 to 50. Could he be a top 50 guy for me by the end of the year? Potentially, but I don't think he'd be any higher than 40, judging by who I've got in my top 40 this year. Sorry if this has been asked before, but it seems like a lot of WHL players are putting up QMJHL-like statistics. Are the top-end players just great, or has the WHL gotten worse defensively? That's a very interesting question. I think that a big factor here is sort of hockey-wide, and that is that scoring in general is just a lot higher. Like, number one, scoring, I think, is just up across the board in a lot of these leagues. It is in the NHL. I think it's difficult for goaltending to keep up with just how good the game in front of them is getting nowadays, just how fast, just how good these kids are at shooting the puck, and how skilled they are, and how, in a lot of cases, how big they are and how physical they can be. So for me, I think that's a big factor. And with the WHL also, like, this happens in the CHL quite often, where players teams will load up in the CHL, and down the stretch, they will score 12 goals in a game often, or 10 goals in a game often against the bottom teams in the league. And that just is a way for those top end players to just score and score and score and score and score. That happens in the Q as well. But for me in the WHL, like, it's a good league full of a lot of skilled players. Canadian goaltending in general just has not really been great for a long time now overall. And so I think I wouldn't say the WHL has gotten worse defensively, but I would say that hockey in general, at a lot of levels, the offense has gotten a lot better. And I think that there's a lot more focus on offensive participation from all players on the ice, right? Before, I've done a lot of work on this in the past in the NHL. I don't know about junior, but in the NHL, one of the biggest things that have changed that boosts overall offense over the last 10 years has been the involvement of defensemen offensively, not forwards, right? The defensemen are shooting more, they're generating more primary assists than they ever have before, and that has kind of bled into junior, I think, where you're seeing a lot more defensemen who are being given a little bit more freedom. They're giving a little bit more opportunity to sort of the more undersized skill guys, and sort of letting them play that way. And I think that also inflates things. So I don't know if it's like a league specific problem or point to make. More so, like, hockey in general is kind of going that direction, and the dub is definitely, I agree with you, definitely benefiting quite a lot from that. Have you seen any of Ozbej Rep, the Slovenian kid? Yeah, I've seen this kid. He looks decent in the Hockey Allsvenskan. Yeah, so David, I have seen him. I was actually watching him last week a little bit. And I mean, that's kind of what I came away with from him, is just like, he's been decent. I haven't tracked any games of him. Maybe I will by the end of the year, because I was kind of interested in him, but the skating didn't seem like high end enough for me to really be down with a player like that, where the offensive game kind of might lag a little bit, but for that level of play, he certainly doesn't look out of place, which is notable. And I remember watching him internationally and thinking he looked pretty good there, but again, not super productive. But yeah, I like him. Could he be drafted? I wouldn't be surprised to see someone take a swing on him late, especially if he, say, goes to the under 18s. I think he's still eligible, or am I thinking of someone else? Let me Google him real quick. Osbej Rep. So he's not eligible for the under 18s, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he plays on the national team for Slovenia this year. He didn't play on the World Junior team for Slovenia this year, probably because he was playing pro in Sweden. But yeah, he's decent, like you said. I think decent is the right way to put it. Would he be if he's draftable? I maybe. I wouldn't do it. I don't think, not right now, but I'll be looking at him again because he does seem kind of neat. Here you go. Here you go. This one's for you, AJ. Ricky says that he's not even sold on Matthews being a top 3 guy in the NHL. This person's list is McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Kucherov, with Matthews at 5.
You're crazy. Like you're nuts. There's a top 4 in my mind. McDavid's number 1, and then the guys that come afterwards in the next tier, and in any order you want: Matthews, McKinnon, Makar. I like Kucherov a lot, but I'm sorry, I can't give him an edge over the guys I said ahead because he's just not as impactful, at least from like a defensive perspective too. Like he's bad that way at times. Like it can be pretty brutal with Nikita Kucherov on defense, and like he's got the Russian winger effect where he's got the disappearing and reappearing act like I do on this show when it comes to the prospect questions.
For now. We'll get you going. We'll get you going.
Until the Leafs are eliminated and I become an expert.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So, like, I like Kucherov a lot, but he's not at the level of Matthews. He's just not. Like, Matthews is a two-way guy. And I know, like, people can pull up numbers. Like, can pull up actual, like, the Rap'em charts and whatever else. You got to watch games to an extent. But what Auston Matthews does in terms of, like, stripping pucks from guys... And I'm not saying, like, block shots is not the most important metric by any means, because that's an indicator of you being on the ice when there's shot attempts taken against you. But Auston Matthews has led centers and I think forwards in blocks for quite a while now. Like, I know he is this year. Like, Matthews has that over, like, that 200-foot game always. And obviously there's going to be times where all these guys make bad mistakes. And I'm sure there are tons of clips of Matthews that people will pull up and be like, he's not good defensively at all. Because I saw something like that. I saw something stupid like that in preseason when the Habs scored an overtime winner against Matthews and Martin, right? But, like, I just think he's so rock solid. And then you add just the most disgusting goal scorer of all time. It's really hard to not put him in the top end conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there is a ton of evidence that he is at least the best 5-on-5 goal scorer of this generation when you can prove that, which to me puts you right at the top. Like, that's the most difficult thing to do. Score goals at 5-on-5. It's the most difficult thing to do in the NHL. So yeah, I can't not have that guy super high. Is there a legitimate reason that teams don't take a chance on Jaromir Jagr? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. Yes, he's short, but he's not a bad skater, just isn't super, super explosive. Well, you just said it, right? Like, the problem with Jaromir Jagr is he is so tiny. Like, he is slight and small. I don't think he is a particularly effective defensive player either. Granted, after having seen Wilmer here and there over the last 2 seasons with BU, would I throw him an NHL contract? Like an entry-level deal for nothing outside of money, or an AHL deal? 100%. I if it doesn't cost me a draft pick, I'll do it. He's not even eligible for the draft anymore. I would give him a flyer, but I don't have super high hopes for him, unless in the next year or two when he I imagine stays in college. If he really just takes the NCAA over, maybe I could see it, but he's like around a point a game on one of the best teams in the country for a 5'8" skill first guy. to me, he kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the similar criticisms that people levied towards Andrew Crystal last year. Crystal, I think, is not as quite as he's not a bad skater either, but he's also not like high end enough where people can look at him and go, he'll figure it out, right? Like it'll get there, which is why he slipped. Whereas with Wilmer, it was like the creativity was good, but not on Crystal's level. The passing ability was good, but not on Crystal's level. Like it's with Wilmer, it's like if you're picking up a 5'8" forward, you got to be really sure that you're going to get someone who can really move the needle, especially with a guy like him skill wise. And I just don't think NHL teams see that yet, especially when it comes time for the draft. Like when you got to put your name behind a guy in the draft and you have a bit of a doubt that this guy's going to make it, probably not. He just bumps him down the list. But I imagine he'll get a pro contract somewhere. Don't know where, but I imagine he will. And that might be really good for him to have the ability to choose where he goes. Because I do think that there is a future for him in pro hockey. I just don't know if it's the NHL, unfortunately. Have you seen BCHL or Jack Pridham? He looks like a pretty good skater and has some skill. Yeah, I was watching him the other day, actually. No lie. I thought he was fine. I haven't seen a tremendous amount of him, but I agree. Like the skating is pretty good. But again, like with Junior A in Canada, in my view, like you've got to be really moving the needle at that level, like really giving her. How many guys have we seen drafted out of the BCHL, like Dante Fabro, Tyson Yost? Those guys were well over 100 points in a season on a really, really good team. Bradley Nadeau, I think, has been a bit of an exception, but again, last year watching him, extremely skilled, really smooth footwork, could shoot and pass, dual threat offensive guy, and just jumped off the screen at you every time you saw him. And I don't really see that in Jack Pridham. Mid-late round pick, sure, I guess, but based on what I've seen of guys on my board, he's maybe, if I had a board of 110 guys, he might be at that bottom end, but I don't. But I'll take a closer look at him. I haven't tracked any games of him, and that's usually when I make sort of those judgments more clearly. But yeah, I've seen him a little bit. Haven't really seen a guy that really blows me away there. But I remember last year at SAC, St. Andrews College, I should say. That's Toronto lingo, Toronto high school lingo, SAC. But yeah, Jack Pridham with St. Andrews was really good last year. I thought he played really well there, but that's also Canadian high school hockey. And ideally, you should look good there if you're going to have any hope of being in the NHL. Top 5 pure goal scorers or shooters not named Cole Yzerman. That's a very good question. I mean, Caden Lindstrom is probably in there. Who else? Maybe Tija Ginla. It's crazy to me that Zane Parekh is almost at 30 goals this year already. That's more goals. He has almost as many goals as Liam Greentree. That's just crazy to me. But pure goal scorers as well. I mean, John Mustard has a heck of a shot on him too, and he's really young for the draft. 22 goals in 42 games. Like he can really rip it. But he's not like a pure goal scorer. I think he brings more to the table than that. What else? Who else am I thinking about here? No, not him. No, not him. I mean, Tija Ginla has a ton of goals this year, and he might be part of that. I just haven't really seen a whole lot of it when I've seen him play in the dub this year a ton. But definitely would throw Caden Lindstrom in there. Definitely would throw who else did I say? Oh my goodness, I can't remember. But yeah, those are the guys that I'd probably throw out there to answer that. But there's also not a ton of guys who I look at and go, yeah, this guy's just a pure goal scorer in this year's draft. I don't know. Like if I sort by goals scored on my list, like I don't think Berkeley Catton's going to turn out to be a guy who's known for how many goals he scores. I've got Dominic Ramon on my list, but he's 19 and 30 goals in the WHL at 19 is not incredible. In fact, 2 of the top 15 goal scorers on my rankings this year are defensemen, in Parek and Yakimchuk. So there's that. But that's where I fall on that too. I mean, Celebrini maybe, but again, I think he brings more to the table than just goal scoring. Okay, on to the next one.
I think that there's not so many pure goal scorers anymore, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really exist that much.
Like, I've seen people say things about, like, Matthews is a pure goal scorer, and it's just completely untrue, right?
Yeah, no. Justin Poirier might be a guy you throw out there as a pure goal scorer, but that's because that's kind of all he does. That's kind of it. And I guess that answers your question. But anyway, I interrupted you.
It's okay. I interrupted you.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay. Mutual forgiveness. Yeah, I would put Justin Poirier in there. He's just not ranked on my board. Anyway, on to the next. Can you give a breakdown of Colin Graff's play style, and do you believe he'll make it as a top 6 forward? Just not sure if his point totals are due to a weak division. I do like Colin Graff. He's a skill first guy, right? There's a lot of playmaking in his game. One of the higher pace guys. Quinnipiac is in a bit of a weaker conference, but that team is always just insanely good, even at the Frozen Four level. To me, Colin Graff always kind of leads with his skill and how the skill can sort of create plays and stitch together goals. And, he is a pretty decent goal scorer himself. But I mean, I certainly think he's a player that gets an entry-level deal whenever he decides to leave. He's a player that I regret not ranking because I remember watching him with the Junior Bruins that year in the pandemic and going, I mean, I know the NCDC is not great, but like this guy looks pretty okay. But yeah, I mean, since he's gone to Quinnipiac, he's been insanely talented and dominant. He's got 42 points. If you don't know, he's got 42 points in 26 games, and the next highest scorer on his team has 36 and 31. So he is pretty well out ahead of a lot of guys on his team. Shout out also to Sam Lipkin, one of my guys from a couple of years ago. He's at a point a game on that team as well, but they're always really good. I don't know if I would pencil him in as a top 6 guy. I think that's always a really, really lofty goal, but a middle 6 dude, maybe a good third line playmaker, who can maybe slot in on the power play. I definitely could see that autograph down the road, but down, in the future. But maybe not right away. Thomas Gagne throws Wayne Gretzky out there as the best goal scorer of all time, scored 92 in a single season. Yes, but everybody was scoring 50. But he also, I was watching, I don't remember what it was, but it was some little documentary about Wayne Gretzky, and he had his teammates after he scored those like 80 and 90 goal seasons. They kind of pulled him aside because his goal scoring slowed down a little bit, and they kind of all went, yeah, it's because everybody knows you're a good goal scorer. So you got to learn how to make plays too. And then he went out and had 160 assists or something. So do what you will with that information. Yegor Korshkov is the best in Leafs history. He's a goal per game. That's true. You can't argue with facts like that. Yegor Korshkov, greatest Leaf to ever live. That's a good point. Yeah.
Damn sample size.
Yeah, you can't argue with a goal per game, Estuardo, hello, sir, or madam, person. Hello, Will. Can you identify mobile defensemen with strong defensive skills who are expected to be drafted outside the first round who don't rely on physical play? That's a lot of check boxes, but I think I can help you out. So my thing is sorted by average rank. I mean, the guy I always recommend in this situation would be like a Dominic Badinka. Big, but really mobile, rangy. He does play physically when he needs to, but also just sort of plays it really safe, plays it really smart. And relative to a guy previously in Sweden who kind of came with that archetype in Helge Grans, I think he does get around the ice a little bit better than Helge Grans did when I remember watching him back in the day, all those years ago. So I like Badinka and Helge Grans was, a guy often ranked in the late first round, but I like Badinka a little bit more. I've come a long way on him over the course of the season. Danilo Stinkov is another one that I would throw out there. He's very, very young, but I think he's been pretty solid in Zurich playing for that team. I watched a game of him playing in the second division. I thought he was very good at that level. And so, he's had some rough moments. I thought whenever he's worn the Swiss jersey this year, I think he's looked a little bit rough. Guys can kind of get through him a little too quickly, but the smarts and the positioning and the ability to move the puck and all those things are all really good. There's some offensive upside there, I think, with him. But he's a pretty good defenseman as well without needing to be too insanely physical. Stein Solberg is a very physical player, so that's kind of not what you're looking for, but he's a pretty good defensive player as well in the Norwegian Pro League, and I've come a long way on him too. Moves the puck also pretty decently well. Adam Kleber, I think I'd also throw him in there. I think Adam Kleber could be a guy that goes a lot higher than people think, just because while you look at his point totals, he's got 19 points in 36 games, but that's still points on 20% of his team's goals, which is quite high for a defenseman. He's 6'5", and I think he skates really, really well for a guy that tall. For me, he's ranked in the top 50, and Central Scouting has him at 60th in North America. But Kleber's a guy who, the last game I watched of him, it was like, oh yeah, he skates really well for a big guy. He stick checks really well. He can play physical when he needs to. And then, oh, whoa, look, there he goes dangling through the offense. So to me, when I watch him, like, one thing I need to do before the end of the year is do a game of him and then do a game of Carter Yakimchuk, because while I don't think Kleber has had the same sort of highlight reel moments that Yakimchuk has had, I think there are things that he does better. And to me, better in a way that really benefits a defenseman. So that also kind of factors in. But yeah, he's another guy I'd probably throw into that discussion for sure.
What about your boy, Marcus Kiersey?
No, he is not a good defender. No, he's okay as long as he doesn't have to push a guy. But anyway, we don't talk about him right now.
Will
okay.
has turned on his original boy of the year.
No, I haven't turned on him. It's just, the weaknesses are weak. They are weak, but I still think in the 7th round you could do a lot worse. Because that's probably where he's going to go. Who do you take in a fight between Stuart Little and Remy from Ratatouille? Oh boy. Honestly, probably Remy. Only insofar as Remy's a dirty rat and probably carries some sort of disease that would take out Stuart Little even if he lost the fight. I don't know. AJ, who do you take, Stuart Little or Remy?
I don't really remember Stuart Little as a kid. I'll be
honest.
Yeah,
that's true. That movie is from a long time ago. Yeah.
But I remember Ratatouille.
Also, Stuart Little is just too kind, Like the rat from Ratatouille, like Remy from Ratatouille is kind too, but has a little bit of an edge, but Stuart Little does not have that. Wow, Stuart Little came out in 1999. Holy smokes.
So a year before I was born.
Yep.
Like
I read the book in school. I remember that.
I vaguely remember Stuart Little, but not a ton.
Stuart Little nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, but lost to, drumroll, The Matrix. There's a tough competition to get over. Stuart Little or The Matrix for visual effects? I don't know. But anyway, I'd probably go with Remy, even just for the biological warfare side of things. Probably. We got some name jokes that I'm not going to fall for. How did the engines come to life in the world of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends?
Magic,
honestly,
and animation.
Maybe some sort of lightning. George Carlin, the narrator, probably had something to do with it, because he has something to do with everything in the universe before he passed away, and then when he passed away, the whole world went to crap. So I think he was kind of keeping all those things together, and his narration in that show gave everybody their life. But I don't really know, honestly. It's a good question. I don't know Thomas the Tank Engine. I don't know anyone who is from that world, but if I ever run into them, I'll ask. Man, there's some good Jan Mishak ripoff names here coming and flying around. Those are good.
Everybody's trying to get you, Will.
I know. Sean Cosgrove brings up the fact that today there were 3 hat tricks in the day today. The thing I noticed as well, I don't know if this has ever happened. It feels like it. I don't know. I don't remember the last time this happened. But every single game, if on a day where there are 10 or more games, I'm curious, 10 games today, all of them, the winning team had at least 4 goals. That's a lot of goals.
the Minnesota-Vancouver game aside, 10-7, Minnesota with 7 goals in the third period. I mean, maybe that's all of Vancouver's regression tied up into one game. They've been outperforming so bad that they just all fell apart in one game, and now for the rest of the year, they're going to win out every single game and call it a day. But that was also an interesting thing I saw today, that now it's official. Every single game, the winning team has 4 goals. But yeah, I don't know how often 3 hat tricks in a day has ever happened.
In a game. It was in a game, Will.
Oh, in a game, right. Yeah, it was in a game, right. Gee whiz. Oh, my God.
JT
That's just
Miller,
so silly.
And Joel Eriksson-Ek, and Kirill
Kaprizov. Although an empty netter doesn't count, right?
It counts.
No, it counts. It counts. I don't care. It counts. Today it counts. Would you trade Anton Lundell for a defenseman if you were Bill Zito? No, because this is about as low as Anton Lundell's value probably gets, and you never, ever see young players like this that were drafted that high traded this quickly. It's very rare, right? Jamie Drysdale was traded, but that's because Cutter Gauthier wanted the heck out of Philadelphia. So I don't know. I think that Florida could look elsewhere to get defensemen. I don't think you have to jump immediately to trading a guy who is having a, let's say, less than desirable season. He hasn't been bad. Whenever I see Florida, I think Lundell's been fine. And this, look, I've always felt the same way about Anton Lundell since the day I laid eyes on him all those years ago. And I said it in the report at the time. Like, he is the spitting image of a guy who's going to play third line minutes in the NHL and be perfectly fine at it. Like, he's not phenomenal. He's not going to score a bajillion points. But if you just want a guy who will go out and do the job and do it for 15 to 17 minutes a night, he'll do it, right? And that's kind of what he's becoming, which I think, is fine. But I don't think you jump the gun if there is anything more in the tank, or if he is kind of going to regress back to where he was last year. I don't think you make that trade to just dump him for help now. Matt asked he says that he wants to watch the world burn. Where is Sidney Crosby going to end up? He's not going anywhere, man. If Sidney Crosby hadn't won a Stanley Cup or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, I feel like he might go somewhere else. But I think that guy's a Penguin until the day he dies. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe AJ, if you disagree.
No, I think he's going to be a Penguin. But let's entertain this because Matt shows up.
Yeah,
all the time.
Fair enough. That's true. We can entertain it.
Let's rephrase this. Where would you like to see Sidney Crosby end up? And we both can't say Toronto for everybody else's sake.
No, and I don't know. He's a Maritime boy. You know what? You're gonna probably
don't do it.
Quit.
You're probably gonna quit. Don't do it. I know what you're gonna say. Don't do it. Don't do it.
What do you think I'm gonna say?
You're gonna say Montreal.
Oh no, I'm not doing that. No, I was gonna say Boston though.
Oh,
I feel like Sidney Crosby as a Boston Bruin to finish his career would be so cool. Or like in Vegas, like behind Jack Eichel. Those were the 2 names that came to mind right away. But making the money work would be tough. But no, I wouldn't send him to Montreal. But yeah, the teams that came to mind immediately were Vegas and Boston. I just feel like Crosby in a Boston jersey would look right. It would, it wouldn't look right if Crosby were in like a Leaf jersey or a Sens jersey or a Rangers jersey or a Islanders jersey or a Stars jersey, but like Boston and I could see that. But I feel like if he ever left Pittsburgh and went to Boston, the whole area of the country would evaporate into nuclear winter.
So for me, I'm just gonna pick my second. Yeah. I'm gonna pick my second favorite team, the Arizona Coyotes, because it'd be fun. It'd just be so funny to see Crosby, Arizona Coyotes jersey, playing next to playing with Logan Cooley, who idolized him as a kid. I think that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, that would be so fun.
Yeah,
I don't think it would ever happen, but
Will wants to change his answer now.
No. I still feel good about Boston and Vegas. I feel like that would be a whole lot of fun too. How is Daniil But this season? Honestly, I've really liked him. I've seen him a few times playing with Locomotive. Very productive. Certainly a little bit quicker on his feet than he was last year, and a little bit more resilient under pressure than he was last year, which he was pretty good at before, but now he's sort of really making it really difficult for guys to get on him and strip the puck off of him and all that stuff. I think he projects to the NHL extremely well, which is why I had him ranked so high at the end of last year. And he just got so much better as the year went on, and he is very young for the draft class. But just a really, really good case study to keep an eye on for the NHL of, he might not be the fastest guy in the world, but a really good application of a gigantic player. I know Bill Armstrong is out there every month saying he's grown 3 inches or whatever, but even if he stays at like 6'5", 6'6", going into the NHL, like I don't think he's like a Nick Bjugstad type 6'6" guy. Like he's got a heck of a shot. He's got, a heck of an ability to keep guys at bay. He's getting a little bit better powering through pressure. I think he's improved and he's looked pretty good.
And think of that guy with Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley.
Oh my God, I know. With Dmitry Simashev feeding him the puck all day.
Yeah, and Sean Dursey as his D partner.
Yeah. And Terrell Goldsmith dropping the gloves 3 times a game. Anyway, have you submitted your resume to John Davidson? No, but if anyone has any ins with John Davidson, I'm happy to answer, because I was in Columbus literally a month before the pandemic, and I loved it there. If anyone has anything negative to say about Columbus, I'll go to bat for that city, because I loved it there. Really cool. How do I put it? Like a really cool middle America vibe, right? It feels like you're still kind of in a city that feels like the heyday of a city like Detroit, really cool city. Is there a ton of things going on? Maybe a little bit here and there. I'll never forget when I showed up in Columbus. The night I showed up in Columbus, it was really late. I got in at like 11:30. There was a giant snowstorm that day. Took me forever to drive there. I was driving a Mini Cooper. Like it was ridiculous. And I was staying at a hotel with Smart Scouting's head boy, Josh Tesler. And we wanted food because we both arrived really late. The only thing we could find that was open anywhere close to our hotel, which was downtown, was White Castle. It was the only White Castle experience I've ever had. Bar none, worst fast food in the world that I've ever had. Terrible. So that wasn't a great start, but the rest of the weekend in Columbus was fantastic. Do you think Columbus still has a solid farm system? Yes, big time. Brindley or Cowan? Hey, that was the discussion from this morning. It's the same person. That's it.
Brindley, baby.
In the Discord server.
It's Brindley.
Yeah, I lean Brindley, but Cowan is also having a heck of a season.
Don't care.
When you watch players, do you do game reports or just track? So I do track data. But what I do is sort of put notes on the players in general in a document, because the way that my data pipelines work is I have this gigantic spreadsheet where all the players are, and it feeds. I have a sheet for every player, and then there's a master thing that all the data feeds into. And then through that, I also have text fields for each player's separate sheet where I can just sort of jot notes as I go. But I generally don't do that until like around now in the season, because you might see something one game and then it kind of goes away, and it's just sort of like what sticks in your mind about a player. Like when you're watching, to me, it's like when I watch a guy for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time, you kind of know what you're going to get generally, not specifically, but in general. And you can kind of go, all right, I've seen this a lot, and I've seen this sort of deficiency a lot, and this strength a lot. And so I'll just make note of those. And then that text also feeds into like the master sheet with all the reporting tools and everything in there. Is Jason Robertson's current season a regression to his relative talent level, or can he consistently perform at a similar level of dominance as last year? That's going to be very interesting. From what I've seen of Dallas, and we should have asked Grav about this, but it seems to me that teams kind of know that Robertson isn't like the best skater. And so if you don't give him a whole lot of space or time with the puck, he's a lot less effective. So it's kind of, to me, it's going to come down to whether or not he sort of works around that in a way, or the team works around that in a way systemically, or how he approaches the game. If those things change, maybe I could see it. But because I don't know if he's like going to be a consistently dominant player, but I think he's going to be a good one. Like he's still doing quite well.
Point per game. right now.
Yeah, he's a point per game now, which nowadays is not the most notable thing, but it is good. He's having a very good season. It's just not what he used to have.
It's more that the goals have come down quite a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from people knowing that that's what he does and kind of countering that a little bit more.
Which just gives more credence to the Matthews argument.
Very true.
Every year comes back with a new skill. And so Jason Robertson's gotta figure out how he can also implement some new weapons. Just some new things that he can do in terms of shooting.
Yep. For sure. Someone else mentioned when we were talking about Columbus that Kirill Dolzhenkov is interesting. He certainly is. Very much so. What would your current top 5 Hart leaders be? Mine's Kucherov, McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, and Pasta. I mean, for me, I probably would say McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, Hellebuck, Makar, something like that.
It's also
maybe I don't know. What about?
Man.
Yeah, it's a tough year for this. There's a lot of guys who are having a heck of a season.
For me, McKinnon, Kucherov, McDavid. Then it gets tough. Like Matthews is probably right in there. But I also like because Vancouver's had a great year too, and like Quinn Hughes has been probably their best player of all of those guys. So I'll throw Quinn Hughes in there. But like there's just a ton of guys that you could really give it to.
Yeah.
And even Cale McCarr could even go ahead of Quinn Hughes. Right?
It is. We'll see how the rest of the season goes too, because after what I've watched a lot of the Oilers this year, it is going to be so hard not to give it to McDavid. Like that guy steps on the ice every single time, and he is a monster. Like Matthews, I don't think you can say the same thing about quite as much, but like him and McDavid and McKinnon, those two guys, especially McDavid, like they go over the boards, and everybody knows it's incredible. So I don't know, maybe if he continues really ripping down the stretch, it might be a little difficult to not give it to him. Am I insane, or is hockey Twitter nuts? Oh boy, here we go. People are genuinely comparing Juraj Slafkovsky to Hughes because first overall pick and similar points in the first 2 seasons. Yeah, don't go on Twitter. Like that's what I would say. Which is ironic because this is streaming on it, and I think it's a good website for getting your content that you make out there. But like, I don't know. When I see takes on the internet, a lot of the times it's just, I just imagine the person writing all of that stuff and taking the time to do all of that stuff. And it's like, look, Montreal Canadiens fans want their first overall pick to be good, right? I think most people would be, cheering for someone to not be good is really silly to me, especially when it's like a child or a teenager, which is strange to me. Do I think that Habs Twitter is a little bit out of control about Juraj Slafkovsky? Sure. Has he been really good the last couple of months? Sure. Is he Jack Hughes? No, he is not Jack Hughes. If I recall correctly, Jack Hughes on the Devils when he was a rookie, the team was not good. The team still was just not good. Not that Montreal is much better, but when you're the guy, like Slafkovsky on that line isn't, to me, this might be a hot take, but he's not the guy. Like he's a very important part of that machine, but Suzuki has been amazing the last little while. Cole Caulfield is finally regressing a little bit after the worst start to his season ever for him. But I don't know. Like I go on Twitter less and less every month. I use it to post that this show is happening. Honestly, since Elon Musk took it over, I am absolutely convinced that there is a how do I put it? I'm absolutely convinced that there is a drop off in the engagement that I get because I don't pay for it. I'm very convinced of that. Like literally the day that happened, whenever I would put something out, it just craters, which kind of sucks, but whatever, right? Like that's the way it goes. But I'm not going to pay for it because I'm crazy, or because I'm not crazy. But yeah, I don't know. Hockey Twitter always has been nuts. That's the other thing too. It's nothing new.
Jack Hughes is like a top 10 player.
Yeah.
And Juraj Slafkovsky is very good.
Yep.
But Like, would you even put him in a top? I don't know. Would you even put him in a top 100? But I'm being serious.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't have 100 NHL players in front of me, but he has been really good. Like I think, in my opinion, the reason he's been really good recently is because he's found the things that he does really well in the NHL, and he's just doing them better and more often, right? Like he's gotten a little bit quicker, so his forechecking with that reach is a lot better, and it's very important. He, finds targets more quickly than he used to. The skill level is a little bit better than it was. So he's a guy who can get the puck back, or he can receive a pass in the defensive end, find a guy, or a lot of the time he'll stand at the offensive blue line. They'll get the puck to him, and he'll pass the puck into the offensive zone, sort of at a 45-degree angle to Suzuki or Caulfield or whoever is streaking in there, and then he'll drift in behind. He's had a lot of shot attempts from the goalie's perspective, the right side of the net this year. So he just goes there, and that's his thing, right? Like, that is his job, and he's settled into it, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
And he's really good at that, right? But with guys like Jack Hughes, it's like, well, every single time he steps on the ice and every single situation he's put in, he is moving the needle in the right direction, no matter frickin' what.
It's like watching Clayton Keller at center.
Yeah.
Jack Hughes.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jack Hughes just goes, he carries the puck, he makes you look silly, he attacks you with speed, he can score goals like pretty consistently. He's a great playmaker as well. Like even when Jack Hughes was first in the league, he was right up there as like an elite transition player in his first year. He just wasn't converting points. Like, he was carrying the puck extremely well and getting across blue lines with control consistently. There was always the signs for Jack Hughes that he was going to be a god, right?
Yeah.
Like, Slafkovsky's very good, and he's been a lot more creative recently. Like, I've seen him pull stuff off, like trying spin passes.
Right.
And he's doing stuff that's cool and it's working, but like, he'll never be at the level of Jack Hughes. And that's no knock to Yuri Slafkovsky. Jack Hughes is just insane.
Yes, it is. You're a moron.
It's not. Jack Hughes is just disgusting.
Yes. Yeah. But also, like, the other thing too, I saw that post about all the first overall picks and how Slafkovsky is scoring. Like, if anything, that post is also illustrative of like how a first overall pick doesn't automatically mean that you get an otherworldly hockey player, right?
Exactly.
Like, I think people were looking at points per game on that post too. Like, Logan Cooley has more points per game, I think, still to this point. I could be wrong, and I hate constantly bringing him up, but
you also love it.
Yes, I do. But it's like it's like, if you expand it a little bit, like, there's also a lot of players, like, look at 2012, right? Yeah, you could look at Nail Yakupov and be like, yeah, Slafkovsky's scoring more than Yakupov. Isn't that amazing? It's like, well, yeah, Morgan Riley also went in that top 10, right? And who would I rather have on my team, right? I mean, obviously one is much older than the other, but I don't know. It's Twitter, right? Like, people are gonna, Habs fans want their guys to be good, right? So if they have evidence that their guys are good, that they're good, then they're going to post it, right? Like, if you disagree, cool, right? A lot of these things just come out in the wash anyway. 5 years from now, if Slafkovsky's 100-point a year guy, and everybody who thought he wasn't going to be that and thought he might be more of a middle six guy, cool, right? I saw Rachel Dory basically get destroyed the other day on Twitter, but like, what she said wasn't exactly the most controversial thing ever, that like, he was on a contending team, he'd be a very good second line winger, which, yeah, like, to me, like,
that sounds about right to me.
That sounds relatively accurate, but you kicked the hornet's nest. Honestly, you kicked it really hard. Like, really hard. So anyway, welcome to the party, I suppose. Oh, speaking of Slafkovsky, someone shouts out that the Chris Neil number retirement is insane. I agree. That's insane. I forgot that was a thing, but I saw it on TV the other day, and that blew my mind. Why was Slafkovsky not number one on your draft board when his jaw line has a 100% WAR? Honestly, I have no idea. It's a lesson that I think I have to carry forward to future draft analysis. jaw lines per 60. I don't know. The angles of the jaw. Basically what I'm saying is that the NHL draft needs a little bit more eugenics, I think is what that means.
I've been told by my cousin that I have a Giga Chad jawline, so I'm going to take
You do have a nice jawline.
I'm going to take this to mean that I should have been a first overall pick.
Exactly. Yep. Well, your time's not over yet. You're still young, you know.
I can't be drafted as a first overall pick at this point, though. I am 23 years old.
Yep. Related to retiring numbers, we should applaud people wearing 66 and 99. Are they in the rafters in my home arena for the Blues? No. So give Dalibor Dvorsky 66. Yeah, I mean, look, you can't wear 99. The league retired it. But yeah, I agree. Like, why one number retired means that another team's player can't wear it? Otherwise, like, yeah, you could probably find 40 numbers that nobody should wear. But it's about the team. Retiring numbers is about the player and what they meant to the team. It's that simple to me. Any drastic changes in the rankings recently? Well, I keep bumping Badinka up higher and higher the more I watch him. Beckett Seneke is up quite a bit. What
it sounds like is you keep bumping Marcus Kiersey down.
Let's see. Kiersey has moved down 5 slots. He's in my second round now. Linus Eriksson is up quite a bit. Oh, there's a Russian defenseman, Timur Cole, who was in my third round. He's now in my second round. That's quite a big jump. Oli Josephson and Red Deer is also a guy who I put on the list who is in my second round now, but he was not on the list, I don't think, when I put out a ranking. I wanted him to be. I thought he was when I posted it, but I was wrong, I think. But those are the guys that I would highlight right away as guys that have moved up quite a bit. Nathan Villeneuve is another one who moved up quite a bit since I put my rankings out. If you are a partner of the site, the higher end subscriber where you get access to all the data, I have on my rankings now that you can follow as the year goes by. I've added what my ranking was in when I put my list out last month, and I put in there as well where they've changed, like the number difference between the two. Michael Brandsteg-Nygaard is also down quite a bit since I've seen him, since I ranked him at 7 in January. He's down near 20 now after watching him a couple more times. Nothing against him, but just other guys I think have stepped up a little bit. What else do we have here? What else do we have?
There was a response comment to what Dory said.
That is not what Dory said. She said any first overall player that wasn't a point per game player by 19 was a bust. Okay, yes, that is ridiculous. That is an insane statement. Fair enough. But the thing that I saw from her was that she said that his whatever, it doesn't matter, but yes, that is crazy, especially in this day and age, because it's also objectively just not true in recent years.
Yeah, it's also really tough to enter the league and just be a god.
Yeah, the NHL is really friggin' hard.
We got spoiled really hard with McDavid and Matthews in back-to-back years, and then we really didn't get a first overall pick that just took over and dominated immediately. Like it took Jack Hughes a little while. And then we got Connor Bedard, who is a generational talent. So
here's my hot take, right? I think we're entering or have already entered a world where in the NHL draft and you're adding players to your team, just because you pick first overall, honestly, generally, unless it's like a Connor Bedard guy, doesn't mean anything. Like it means a lot. You get your pick of the litter, but when you look back on drafts, it's not ever in the order that you think it's going to go. And with how difficult the NHL is now relative to a lot of the leagues that these kids are coming from, it is really, really tough. And a lot of the guys who do what they do outside of the NHL, you really have to think about what they can do in the NHL that will put them in that echelon, right? Because, they won't immediately be a 80-point guy like Connor Bedard, right? So what is going to be the issue that's holding them back from being key players in the NHL? And how do you tackle that? Like, what are they going to do to overcome that? So that's the big question now. So I think we're in a world where the draft isn't necessarily about just getting a guy who immediately is going to transform your franchise, but rather identifying players that will fit what you're trying to do and how you have a good plan on how to get there, essentially, is what I'm getting at. What are your thoughts on Jean-Luc Foudy's development? Still a fan of him? Yes, he's just missed half the season, so this year is pretty much a write-off, and he missed a bit last year as well. Is there any hope for Oscar Olofsson being a regular NHLer at this point? I don't know. I mean, it's never over, but I wasn't huge on him when they drafted him. But yeah, I think I don't know. I never really thought he was going to be an extremely high-end NHLer. Gavin McKenna. Oh God, yeah, I saw a lot of Gavin McKenna tweets today. Gavin McKenna is 16 years old in the WHL. He's a 2026 eligible. He's got 80 points in 50 games. One other player has had similar production when they're 16, which is Bedard. Is he the next big thing at first? So you got to remember, like, Bedard played on the Regina Pats, who were and still are awful, or at least not good. McKenna's playing on one of the best teams in the league. Has he been really good this year? Absolutely, right? Like, he's looked really good. The thing with McKenna, though, is, again, you're thinking about the NHL. He's really slight, really slight on his feet. He's thin, underdeveloped physically. And he really relies on having the puck a lot. And when you're those two things in conjunction, like, to me, you look at a Gavin McKenna and I see kind of like a Mitch Marner style player, a guy who, you know, when you watched Mitch Marner in junior, you're like, yeah, he's really thin and small and really needs the puck a lot. But gosh, when it really gets going, he's really good. And I feel like with McKenna, it's similar. So I could see McKenna being a guy who does get drafted really high in the NHL draft, but I'm not ready right now to go immediately and say he's the next Connor Bedard. But he is an extremely talented player and having a heck of a season. I don't know much about scouting, neither do I, but is it feasible for scouts or maybe certain types of coaches to gauge a player's rate of learning certain skills that would elevate their game? That is a major thing that teams are looking at, from what I've been told and what I know. They are really, like, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a team that is a really good example of this. They draft guys like Fraser Minton and Easton Cowan ahead of where everyone else kind of wants them, because they think through their evaluation of these players, both publicly or privately at least, that they think that they have the skills to learn and the skills to grow and play the right way, whatever that means to you. But really understanding what happens in a game, how it happens, how they would fit in, how they would adapt, how they would learn, and how they would grow. Like, we just finished talking about how hard the NHL is. Every single NHL prospect these days is going to have some sort of learning curve to get there. And so, yeah, it is a major thing that NHL teams, I think, are really looking at. At least I think if you're a good NHL program, you probably should be, at least. If Gretzky and Lemieux were in the NHL today with the training and equipment that today's players have, would they be as good as they were back then? It's hypothetical and a what if. I honestly think it is impossible to know. I think it is impossible to know, because I don't know. Like, I can't say no and I can't say yes. For all I know, Wayne Gretzky could have become addicted to video games at 16 years old these days and never been what he could be. I don't know. What I've over the years, I've gone back and watched a lot of those guys' game tape. I do think that they would be very good NHL players these days, especially Mario Lemieux. I think that his game in the 90s, I am part of the camp that is willing to throw Lemieux into the same echelon as Gretzky because of what he was doing at the time when he played, relative to the rest of the league, and how awful Pittsburgh was without him and Jagr. But anyway, the point is, I don't really know how to answer that question, which is probably not what do you think?
I think they'd be very good NHL players. I don't think they'd be the best.
Yeah, very good. Like, are they going to be Connor McDavid? No.
I don't think like that tier of 4 that I talked about today of McDavid, Matthews, Makar, McKinnon. I think they're outside of that in today's game.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think so too.
Could they be top 10 players? Possibly. Right? Like, you'll never know, because they're not going to suit up in their prime years in today's NHL. But I think just like Wayne Gretzky was so ahead of his time because he was just smarter than everybody else.
Yep.
he was all about anticipating play. Like I did a little thing on Wayne Gretzky as a school project, and his dad was so adamant about being good at anticipating play. Like one of the things that Walter said to Wayne was, watch this, and he would shoot a puck around the boards, and he said, this is how most people would go after the puck, and he just skates around the boards and follows it. Then he did it again. He's like, this is how a smart person does it, and he just cuts around the other side. Like he didn't go around the boards, he just went to the other side of the ice to collect it. Like you're rimming the puck in, and it's going along the boards. So instead of chasing it, you just go right instead of following it. So like his whole game was based around anticipation.
Yeah.
And good teamwork.
Yeah.
Which was ahead of its time.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about the emergence of hockey development in Southwest Florida recently, especially with Brindley and Casey coming from the same program? I mean, like there is a grain of truth that you can show that what Gary Bettman has said for years, right? If you want to grow the game, you gotta give fans a reason to play or kids a reason to play. And a lot of like those Florida teams have been there almost my entire life. And when they started out, it was rough, except Florida going to the Stanley Cup final in 1996 as a shock. That was completely insane. But anyway, I mean, it's happening in Arizona. You're seeing more and more players from Arizona showing up. You're seeing more and more players from California all the time. Florida is a relatively wealthy state as well. Old money, literally old people with money go to Florida. And so there is a bit of a market there for youth hockey and getting kids playing. I absolutely think that there's something there. And I don't think that would be there without the NHL or without the NHL teams that are in Florida.
Yeah, and we've mentioned players from these states, all of these states today, that are in our upper echelon. Like Matthews is from California but grew up in Arizona, and Jack Hughes is from Orlando.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I forgot
he just moved around a lot.
Sure. Right, of course. But yeah, I think that's absolutely happening and I love it. When you watched Matthews and McDavid in your draft years, what were your opinions on them, if you remember? Are they exceeding or matching your expectations? I mean, I would say McDavid is matching them. I mean, scoring as much as he is now, nothing really surprises me, because when he was a 17-year-old, he just did whatever the heck he wanted. Like it was like watching him in the NHL, but against children, and he just wasn't as strong or not as like, he was confident, but didn't have the power and like the same amount of like real swagger in his game than what he has now. Obviously that's come with age and maturity and physical development, but he was insanely fast, insanely skilled, always going to the net, never really taking shortcuts, just constantly just going. And I'm sitting there going, well, okay, this guy in the NHL, he'll be able to, as long as he gets a little stronger, there's nothing that says he can't just keep doing what he's doing, right? Like there's nothing there. And yeah, that's kind of how I felt about him then. Matthews, I felt a little weird about. He was playing pro hockey in Switzerland, and he was very good there. I remember watching those games a little bit. And I remember watching him and then watching Patrick Laine and not being able to believe that there was a discussion about who would go first overall. I thought that was absolutely unhinged. But Matthews, to me, I think Matthews is kind of exceeding. I never thought Matthews would be like a 70 goal scorer in the NHL or a 60 goal scorer, but I definitely thought he would be more of a, 40, 50 goal guy, really, really useful player. The shot wasn't quite what it is now. He was a big, powerful player though at that age. Like he was kind of an interesting comparison to McDavid because he carried the puck a lot more in that day and age, I think. And he just didn't have the same amount of like skill level or shooting ability, but it was still very, very good. And I think Matthews, after the first couple of seasons he was in the NHL, the physical development kind of took over a little bit. And the fact that he plays with Mitch Marner means that he doesn't really need to quarterback rushes all that often relative to what he used to do. So yeah, but I remember thinking both of those guys were easy first overall picks. Joel Eriksson Ek has quietly got 28 goals, 51 points in 55 games. Is there a comparable prospect in this draft? A steady, very good defensively net front guy who's tough but not a bruiser. Well, let's see. I mean, yeah, Michael Brenseg-Nygård is a guy who I think could just get better and better and better the more years go by. Maybe a Sacha Boisvert could be one of those guys.
Nygård's funny because they're both hyphenated last names.
That's true. That is a very good point. Actually, I don't think Eriksson Ek is hyphenated. I think it's just his name.
Is it not? I swear it is.
No, it's not. Nope.
Well,
no hyphen.
2 last names. Either way.
Yes. Does Easton Cowan, if he hits his top potential, have top 6 or star upside? What were your opinions on the pick at the time? Clearly exceeding all expectations in the OHL. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be a star, but I do think like a really good second line guy on Toronto, especially, where like by default he's kind of probably not going to be a first line guy, at least right away. I think he could be a very good, like an excellent third line offensive guy or a good second line offensive dude. I think London is an extremely good unit as a team. Cowan has been, he leads with his brain. He's a little bit more skilled this year than he was last year and a little bit more confident, really sort of playing with a little bit more of that. I still watch the London Knights and I come away with a few more times going, oh, wow, look at Denver Barkey go. But Easton Cowan also still really shows up on the score in those games. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about like first line guy. My opinions at the time, I was a little bit confused. Like I thought there were better players right now. But again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I asked around. I was like, what is going on? A lot of people I spoke to kind of were also a little bit confused. Like, oh, here goes Toronto, Toronto being Toronto again. And some people also said, well, Toronto really, really values guys who test really well. Like they set aside a lot of on-ice talent because you can work on that. The list of people that Toronto has working in their development staff will make your head spin. There's like a cajillion of them. And if you have that much money invested in player development, I guess you think you can set aside that raw talent on draft day and go after the guys who think and behave and kind of do what you're looking for as people and as thinkers and as smart people. And you hear things about how smart a lot of their players are. I say it all the time as a joke, but they draft a lot of nerds. And I mean, because they draft a lot of nerds who are good hockey players and try to make them great hockey players, right? Which I think is an interesting strategy. It's different, but I mean, Toronto has been known for doing things a little differently over the last 10 years at this point. On a scale from 0 to Bedard, how good is Celebrini looking as a draft eligible? I don't know. I see Celebrini up in the sort of same alley as like same as like maybe a Matty Beniers kind of 2021 draft. Or like I like Celebrini more than I liked Lafreniere. But yeah, I don't know. Like I don't put him anywhere close to Bedard, but he'll be a very good, I'd say, and not quite a star, but an excellent, like a very good center who can score and plays the right way. Like just a really smart guy who is always working, always hounding the puck and just putting the puck in the net when he can because he can. Is Michael Hage moving up your draft rankings? He seems to be playing great. Oh yeah, he's been high on my list for a while. He is sitting at 24, and which is around where he was. But yeah, he's excellent. I have all the time in the world for Michael Hage. Break down the skating if you can with Liam Greentree. Not great. Finds space pretty well. Tough to get on top of, but Greentree is not a great. I don't know how to explain it. He's he collapses on his feet a little bit, not literally to the ice, but drops a lot of weight on his feet. Doesn't really have the smoothest forward stride a lot of the time when I've seen him. But he kind of makes up for it really well. And I feel like if you can unlock that, you could end up with maybe one of the better players in the draft. But I think he just has a little bit of a ways to go. Crosby to Washington, Crosby to Edmonton, Jordan Millette saying go Sens go. That's too bad. Crosby goes to Arizona. Every arena within 20 miles will be begging to host the Coyotes. That's true. What did I do with Sam? Should we be concerned? No, Sam actually has a family, and he's actually spending family day with his family. So believe it if you want, but that's where he says he is. I know, loser. White Castle is amazing. Okay, wrong. That's the end of that question. We can move on. Which hockey person are you confident to beat up in a boxing match? I'm trying to think. Oh, I just had a terrible thought. I can't say that. It depends on what you mean by hockey person. Could I?
My answer is nobody right now, but if you gave me time to train, I could win against a lot of people, I think, just because that's what I do.
I don't think I could beat any hockey players.
Oh, not any hockey players, but I think they mean like actual person who is
in the sport.
Yeah, like
right.
I'm thinking GM. Like the first person that popped into my mind just because it's funny is Kyle Dubas, even though.
I'm trying to think. Oh! I know, Lou Lamoriello. I could probably. He's like 80 years old. I could beat up an 80-year-old probably.
Yeah, you know what? That's my answer too.
Lou Lamoriello, like as tough as he might talk or not talk,
or might
stare
have been
me down,
and could have destroyed me in his prime.
Unfortunately, I think in his prime he would destroy me, but at this point, and I've boxed before. I used to do kickboxing before the pandemic. I was decent at it, I would say. Not good. I wasn't good, but I knew my way around the ring a little bit. My sparring partner is probably not listening to this, but if he ever hears it, he's probably going to yell at me for saying that. But yeah, I'd say Lou Lamoriello, I could probably punch his head off. I saw a comment on Reddit that Slav would be ranting in with McKinnon's drive. God, okay, no.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That's a trap.
And that's the end of that.
Yeah. Is Joe Aginla already the favorite to be first overall in 2026? Tej is old news. I don't really know. I don't think I've ever seen Joe Aginla play. This is okay. That was the thing. Watching Hemming reminds me of Matthew Wood. I like Hemming moving around the ice a lot more than I like Matthew Wood. I'm a lot more confident in Hemming being a third line physical guy than Matthew Wood being an NHL scorer. If a drafted player doesn't pan out, does the scouting team get blamed heavily or the team for not developing them correctly? Oh God. Well, that's a loaded question, Mr. Raybro.
Depends.
It depends. In my experience, it is as cynical as you could probably imagine from what I've been seeing. Like if NHL boys draft their guy and it doesn't work out, shucks, it's development. If the younger guys who are sticking their neck out for someone and they end up drafting them and that guy doesn't work out, those guys can take a hike. Like it's their fault, right? Like it's bad evaluation. I'm not saying everybody, but that's the general, sometimes the sentiment is that there's a lot more benefit of the doubt given to the guys who have been there for 30 years. Does that make sense on paper? Sure, right? Of course. But is it always the case? Probably not. Okay, let's bang through these because we're way over time.
Yes.
Who's the sleeper player in the draft that could go higher than expected? Oh boy.
Whoever's huge.
Yeah, whoever's really, really big. I mean, I don't know. For a legitimate answer, I don't know. This draft, like, there's just a lot of guys who are like, I don't know.
It's also tough to gauge that because who's gonna.
Yeah, it's early.
And we don't know who's drafting where.
Yeah. Beckett Seneke is a guy who I think could jump up pretty high at the end of the year, just because of how he plays. Liam Greentree too. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see Greentree. Like the thinking of maybe there's a thought out there by the end of the year that if Greentree improves his skating, which you definitely can do, you might end up with one of the best players in the draft. So why wouldn't you draft him really high? Which honestly I might have some time for, but I'm not there yet. Do you ever think there's a point where the NHL draft changes from the 7-round format? I mean, probably at some point, either the world comes to an end or the NHL draft changes format. So at some point, sure. I would want it changed. I think the draft is a bit silly, but such is life. But I think it could change. I don't think I would add more rounds, but I think if they add more teams, I maybe remove a round. I saw the greatest goal scorer of all time, and if it hasn't been done yet, I'm here for Mike Bossy propaganda. That's an interesting thought. I didn't do any data work on Bossy, but that's a good thought as well. Crystal was not a good skater or defensive player in his draft year. Has he gotten better? Yeah, I would say so, but it's still not where you want it to be, personally. But he's been better this year. Definitely still the same player, but the weaknesses are a little bit better. Okay, we're gonna call it. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. This was a great time. Some good chats, some good questions, some good all over the place. Yeah, so that's going to be it. Again, we're brought to you by Fanatics, so you can use the link in the description or scan the QR code in the stream, and it will give us a kickback on anything you buy in the store. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps, where you can find all your CHL and NCAA prospect needs. We are also brought to you by, of course, Scouching.ca, where you can get all the data insights you could ever possibly want into the NHL draft, the players and players making their mark in the NHL. And honestly, thank you to producer AJ. Say the line.
Go Leafs, go.
Okay, that's it. Yep, there's another one there that I feel like, unless you don't feel like saying it anymore, there you go. But I still appreciate you. I also appreciate our graphic designer with the thumbnail work, Mr. Rayan, devoted member of the Scouching community for many years now. Thank you very much for your assistance, and
soon so that'll be graphical upgrades on the show, because Rayan's been working on some designs to put me out of a job.
Exactly.
At least I can still talk.
Yeah, AJ's slowly turning into talent and a video editor, I suppose. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We'll see you Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another show, and we'll see you then. And we'll welcome back Sam in a week.
Yep.
But thank you very much, everyone.
Matthews is the best goal scorer of all time. Good night.